For the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to be starting our meeting today with an adjournment to executive session to discuss staff bargaining negotiations, and then we will return to open session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second. I, Antonio Viveras.
I, Michael Sullivan.
I, Michelle Duarte.
I, Jim Bernard.
Okay, adjourn to executive session. We will be back in approximately 30, hopefully less. Very cool. It's cool. To who? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. Are there any comments and statements from the public before we get started? Not seeing. Oh, you know what? You must be the new. We're going to come up during this section. I'm sorry, what's his name again? Michael. He is the new student rep. We weren't sure if we were going to have one. Have a seat next to Tony. He has some information for us. Introduce yourselves to all of us and let us know what you've got.
Hello, my name is Michael Cliff, and I'm the representative from Student Council. During our first meeting of the year, which we had last Wednesday, we started off the meeting by electing our student government officials, with Vanessa Correa as the president, Daniel Marks as the vice president, Taylor Aruda as our secretary, and Samantha Mangola as our treasurer. From there, we went on to elect other officials like myself to attend school committee meetings. Our representatives for the villages so we can get out what we need to get out to the students. After that, we went on to discuss fundraisers from all the classes, which the freshmen didn't have anything, they still needed a meeting. Sophomores presented a TGI Fridays fundraiser. The juniors had ideas for a Six Flags and Paw Sox fundraiser selling tickets. And the seniors had ideas such as Olive Garden fundraisers and candy fundraisers at Walmart to sell. From there, we went on to discuss the school store and how best to prepare that, get people to know about it, and make that more profitable than it's been in years past. And we came up with ideas for cards that would carry samples from the school store so that students would know that, to start, that we have a school store, which was a problem. After that, we went on to discuss what we're going to do for the pep rally this year so that we can get all that out of the way. And we are trying to get clubs and sports teams to be more active in the fundraiser, be more active in the pep rally, be able to perhaps do skits and talk and games. After that, we began discussing homecomings, things that we'll need for it, zoning, finding out where exactly we're going to have it, just standard stuff. After that, we went on to talk about other things such as DJs for future dances, where we are going to get them, a Halloween fundraiser for this year, since we were starting earlier than we normally do. And a suggestion box for the students to be able to tell student council what they want to get done. And that's all that we went on to do.
Very good update. What's your Halloween fundraiser idea?
Our Halloween fundraiser idea was basically a haunted trail in the back of the school. Okay. Me and a junior named Samuel Young went to the back into the woods to check out pre-existing trails, which we did find. And we began looking at
Yeah,
ways
there's
to
a trail
get,
back there.
we began to look at ways to get props, advertising, and volunteers that would help us to make it a success. And so far, we've been able to find students that would be willing to donate props such as skeletons, spider webs, fake spiders, and volunteers from all the student council that would help to set up, advertise, and participate by dressing up and basically just trying to scare people.
That sounds fun. And I have one question for you. You said you're the villager. Are you the villager
No, I'm-
liaison as well?
No, we elected Taylor Aruda, the editor-in-chief, who's also our secretary for
Okay.
the senior class, to do that.
My question for that is just, I've heard that the printing press is broken. Do you have any information on that?
It was having technical difficulties, but recently it's been fixed. But the only problem with that is the format that is used for the Villager, the new software that's being used to use the Villager, is so far not compatible with the Rizo. But they're fixing up and they're expecting to get a Villager out by the end of this week.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions for him?
Nice job.
Great
Thank
job.
you very much. We look forward to your updates all year. Thank you. Okay, you can go ahead and, let's see, moving on. Dr. Colley, the update on the district improvement plan.
As you know, last year, around Christmas time, we approved the district improvement plan that had several parts to it, all based on the core values that we collected from talking to people in the community, parents, community members, students, staff, administration. And the last couple of years, when I've been here, I've invited the administrative staff to come in and spend a few days with me on retreat to go over what have we accomplished and what still needs to be accomplished to move forward that district improvement plan. When we put the plan together, one of the basic caveats that I put into that plan that I will remind everybody was that the plan originally, when it was done a few years before I came here, asked for a lot of things to be done, but never tied what needed to be done to the funding required to do that. So there were a lot of things that were never really finished because there was no funding to do them, or it was not very measurable. It was, we'd like to continue to improve our student achievement, but there wasn't any standards or any specific goals built into this. The new district improvement plan had specific goals in them, but it all went down to the idea of you need to have the right amount of resources in order to give improvement. In other words, don't ask for improvement if you're going to try to have us do it with less. So you want more, you've got to give more. As you know, last year we had a little bit of an increase in the budget based on shifting funds towards special education instead of regular education. We did see some results out of that. We basically had some monies at the end of last year that allowed us to use those resources that we freed up mostly from special education towards moving forward the capital improvement plan. So that being said, I started with the resource core value area, and what I'm trying to say is several things. One, there's some updates to the goals that I would like to see. One of them is to continue funding capital needs, some of the smaller items, if we have any funding left at the end of the year. We did that last year. And then to include into the capital side of the goals for the resources for the district, something along the lines of what are we going to do with the middle school. That's going to be a very big capital item, whether it's going to be to refurbish the school that's there, the idea of building a new school or expanding the schools that we have. That would be, at least to create the plan, would be a goal for this year. We also, on goal number 2, it's trying to, in the original goal was to try to complete the negotiations and correlate the increases in salaries to town capacity or town meeting. We're still working on that. There may be a vote today. Goal 3, which is partially completed, we did realize savings, and we're hoping to stabilize the cost in special ed. Goal 4, we made a small amount of progress last year. We did add some additional funding for books, assessments, and staff development. That was part of the request for town meeting last year, but we didn't do more because we didn't pass the override. Goal 5 was to try to maintain the staffing for FY12, and we didn't do that last year, so we're trying to stay even from last year to this year. We did add $80,000, but if you look towards next year, if we ever want to get back to where we were a couple of years ago, it'd be quite a bit of money. So I want to put that caveat out there that the original district improvement plan assumed that we would have enough funding to maintain staff, but we didn't. So it already threw that part of the plan out the window. For next year, we will lose about $100,000 in jobs grant, because that grant ends. All the ARA funding ends now, so we won't have that to support any improvements. I mean, it's been a godsend, because otherwise we'd have 2 years of cuts in a row. So it's not the ideal situation, but I do want you to have that as a caveat. In terms of student achievement, that whole section of the district improvement plan, we said we had 3 areas. One was continue to work on the curriculum. This year we did hit the 20% increase in units. The change that I would make in that area for next year is basically, in the middle of the year we got thrown in that now we had to account for the changes, because the state is now going to go for the curriculum core for the national one. So we have to include those in any new units. So I'm asking for a change in the goal from 20% every year to 10% new units, and at least 10% of the units that had already been created to go back and update it with the new curriculum. So we did meet the goal from last year. Now for this coming year, I'm saying we should adjust the goal to go 10 and 10. 10 new ones, 10% new ones, and 10% of the old ones updated to the new curriculum. In terms of goals, we did well with that goal last year. We did increase. In fact, the elementary school got a bunch of new assessments, in particularly the Dibbles and a few others that they're probably going to talk a little bit about. And we hope to include that as we create new units. I'm asking that the new units have the assessments built in. In terms of instruction, that's the one area that I'm going to say we did not meet. We're asking for a 5% increase in the number of students proficient and above, going up to 75%. We did have some large class sizes. That could have something to do with it. We did have some changes at the middle school mid-year where we had 5 third-grade classrooms, and then halfway through the year we added a 6th one using the jobs fund. And then at the middle school and the elementary school, we lost the positions of math, remedial math teachers. So, we're asking more performance, but we have less people helping us get it there. So I'm saying for this coming year, we didn't meet it last year, I'm saying we freeze the expectation of 75%. Race to the Top is looking at us going to between 80 and 85% by 2014, even though NCLB is asking us to be 100%. I'm saying right now, for this coming year, I'm trying to get people to shoot for 75%. And that would be one of the goals that I would suggest we have in there. In terms of the school climate, we, again, when we knew that we weren't going to be able to have the budget that we wanted for this year, we did not follow through on the district improvement goal of having a whole new set of middle school and elementary school teachers do the training for responsive classroom and developmental designs. We were only able to use a little bit of grant fund that we had for just doing round 2, which is RC2 for the elementary school, in the hopes that out of that group we'll identify at least 1 or 2 people that may want to become trainers, which will in the long run make it cheaper for us to provide the staff development to meet that goal. We did have the counseling staff, and again, we're going to hopefully train them as some of them to be trainers for anti-bullying in the buildings. So that's an update that I would make for this year, that we're going to train more people to become anti-bullying curriculum trainers. So that's one of those areas that would say could be done. And we're trying to find a good way to have a database for not just the discipline issues that rise to the level of suspensions, but to have a little bit better tracking method of all the other little things that may be happening, so that we can perhaps prevent them sooner or get them taken care of at the classroom level rather than always dealing with them at the office level. In terms of personal growth, we did maintain the sports and activities last year, so we met that goal. And we actually added at least a couple of things. We had the color guard, for example, here at the high school. So we're hoping that we will maintain for this coming year with the same level of supports in terms of fees and the operating budget. We're going to continue, hopefully, the color guard. We did add a couple of small things like co-op field hockey here at the high school. I don't know if you want to consider that as an addition to the program, because it's still field hockey, but I just wanted to mention that. And then we do have a list of programs at each of the schools. You'll see it within their school improvement plans. So it's a question of, if we have more funding and people want to do new things, they'll probably have to be done with outside funding sources. For example, the Ed Foundation has provided us a lot of little grants for new programs that we wouldn't otherwise do on our own. And finally, in the partnership core area, we did create the inventory. Again, it's built into the school improvement plans. You'll see that in a little bit. And I've suggested to the schools that one easy way to expand on our partnerships is to use Barnes and Nobles. They've been, more than happy to work with us if we wanted to work with them, in particular around things like summer reading. So that may be something we explore for this year. And then we will continue working with the Ed Foundation to see if we can get more donations funneled through them, because they've been a great clearinghouse for donations and funding for programs that are in addition to what we do in the regular core curriculum. So those are basically the updates that I would suggest for this coming year. Like I said, the only areas that we did not meet the expected goals for the district improvement plan was basically the resource area, because we didn't pass the override, which would have meant maintaining staff. And the other one was the NCLB targets that we had asked for, and you'll hear some of that as we do the next part of the presentation, which is the MCAS update.
Any comments for Dr. Colley? Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. MCAS update, Dr. Condon. You're up.
You're going to have to use the microphone, or you're not going to push her out of the way?
I'm sure she won't appreciate me saying this, but this will be her last update for us.
Not your last ever.
Not my last ever, no, I guess not. The MCAS results are in this year. Same as last year, there were 17 tests. Grades 3 through 8 for English and math, and grade 10 in those subject areas. Science is grade 5 and 8, and the students do take an introduction to physics exam in 9th grade. Our proficiency of students compared to the state in Westport, overall, this is all grades, 73% of the students score proficient or above, compared to 69 at the state level, 61 in math, compared to 58 at the state, and 59% in science, compared to 50 at the state. So we're a little bit higher than the state in a couple of areas, and quite a bit more in science. All but one test was at or above the state average. 11 of 17 tests improved or remained level. You can see the tests that increased there. And 6 tests declined. Grade 4 English went down, but it still remains above the state average by a significant amount. Grade 3 math went down. Grade 4 math went down very significantly. That's an area of concern. It's something the school's already looking at. And as Dr. Colley said, there were some changes in the school this past year, some reductions in staff, some increases in class size. That probably had an impact on some of these scores, and that this year may be more regular, and there may be some turnaround in that, in addition to which you'll hear from the coordinators that they will have something to say about how they're going to focus in on the scores and look for improvement. Math at 8th and 10th grade were also down, but that 2 points is really not a significant change. It's more like a level. And grade 5 science went down a little bit. In terms of our state average, the difference between our scores and the state, you can see on the chart that we're level at some grades. At grade 4 English, grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8 English, we're all above the state average. In mathematics, again, we're level at some of the grade levels, but significantly above in grade 5 and grade 6 math, and somewhat above in grade 3 and 7. And in the science, above the state average in the 5th and 8th grade, and right around state average in 9th grade. We looked at this last year, and we're looking at it again. How do our students fare from the time they leave 4th grade until the time they reach 10th? So this is our class of 2013, and as you can see, students' proficiency does grow throughout the grades. The trend is generally upward for English language arts. Mathematics, the same. Students, as they move through the grades, do increase in proficiency. And science, you see the same. Now, it's also the case that as the years have gone on, each grade level has improved, so you see part of that impact as well. AYP scores. I just wanted to point out, and this is something that we've been through before, but there are 2 ways to make AYP. Adequate yearly progress is a requirement of the No Child Left Behind law. And if you look, there are state targets, and those targets were set back in 2001. And they were intentionally set to increase incrementally until 2014, when all children would be proficient in reading and mathematics. And actually, the 100 points hits in 2013, even though the goal was set for 2014. So in 2010, when we were reporting last year, the state goal was, you can look inside that circle, 84.3 in math, 90.2 in language arts. This year, for 2011, the mathematics jumped to a goal of 92.2, and the The math jumped to 92.2, and the English jumped to 95.1. There's a second way of making AYP, and that is to improve over your previous year's scores. So, for example, a school, I said school 1, could have a score in 2010 of 70. It's called a CPI score, a Composite Performance Index. And that school could move up to 78 in 2011 and make AYP. Another school could have a score of 92 in 2010 in English, stay right at that level in 2011, but now not meet AYP because, as you can see above, the target for English is now 95.2. So you can make it by making improvement, which can mean that a school district that's not receiving as high a score as another district, or a school that's not receiving as high a score as another school, may make AYP. And this causes some confusion for people because sometimes they'll see that a school that has one set of scores makes AYP and another school with a higher set of scores does not. But this is the reason for that. At the district level, we did not make AYP in mathematics. We did make it in English language arts. And for a district to make AYP, the district needs to reach the AYP scores in one of the grade bands. And so that did not happen this year in math. Westport High School scores. The high school did not make AYP for the first time in English or math, and I would refer back to what I was just saying. It's not that this was a factor of the scores going up. It's hard for you to read here, but if you can see that the actual score in English for the high school, I can't imagine how you could see it, but I can see the actual score for English in the high school was 94.2, and the target that the high school was aiming for was, the state target was 95, and so they just barely missed that, and actually their scores were probably about level with the previous year, but because that score went up, they made AYP last year and didn't make it this year. And the math was a similar kind of situation. A little bit of a decline, but similar. Middle school did make AYP for everything except subgroups in special education and language arts. And the elementary school did not make AYP in English or mathematics, and that was, we've already addressed that, that was triggered by a decline in scores. Another measure of growth, another measure that the state gives to school districts is the growth. And this is one we talked about last year. The state compares a student's achievement, each individual student's achievement, over time compared to other students who scored a similar way in previous years. So if you were a student who last year failed the MCAS a year ago, the state would compare your score this year in this year's test to the scores of all other students who failed in the previous year, and would say whether you grew more than those students, grew less than those students, or grew about the same. So you're comparing like students. A typical growth is between 40 and 60. Anything below 40 is considered low growth. Anything above 60 is considered high growth. These are the growth percentiles averaged for all the schools, for all the students in Westport. And as you can see, most of them fall right within the average range. The two that would be most on the edge would be grade 5 English and grade 5 mathematics. I'm now going to let the curriculum coordinator speak to you, and the first person who will come up is Chris Daskowitz, who is our elementary English language arts coordinator, and our assistant principal at the elementary school.
Give her all the titles.
If you look up here and you just look at the grade 3 scores first, and I broke the scores down from the language scores, which is basically when you think about grammar skills, and the West scores were 83%, and the state average was 82%, so we were just 1% above the state average. In reading and literature, we had 73% at West, 76% at the state average, so we were 3 percentage points below the state average. And again, a lot of the things that have been said already about the fact that we did have large class sizes, which certainly does impact instruction. We also had a high level of needs in reading comprehension, and so I'm going to speak a little bit more about that on the next slide as to some of the things that we're going to do to hopefully be able to target some of those needs. And also transitioning a class of children in November from 5 classes to 6 classes, though it was a great idea. Ideally, children who are 7, 8, and 9 years old don't always transition quite as well from a class that they have left. They've been part of a class from September till November, and then they are moved to a different class, and sometimes there just has to be a little bit of transitioning that needs to be taken into consideration there. For the grade 4, the West language scores, again, focusing more on grammar and parts of speech and those types of skills. The grade 4, the West was 70%, and the state average was 68%, so they were 2% above the state average there. The composition scores were 65%, with 64 being at the state, so that was just one percentage point above. And the reading and literature, 69%, and the state average was 67%. So we did maintain at least a little bit above the state average in each of those areas. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do to try to help to increase these scores? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a continued assessment of students using data to record reading fluency. And how that is done, as Dr. Colley had mentioned before, it's done through a program we call DIBBLES. DIBBLES stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. And what that is just a way of being able to progress monitor, listen to children read. It is a one-to-one type of assessment. It is done with one child and one teacher. And it is a way of being able to track their fluency. How well do they read, and how well are they able to then retell what they read. One other thing that we're going to be doing is bi-weekly progress monitoring students. That simply means that once we have given an assessment, 2 weeks later, the children who have been targeted as children at risk or below grade level in reading will be progress monitored again. And hopefully from even within 2 weeks, sometimes we're able to just be able to identify some of those needs and be able to really tweak them and be able to figure out what it is that each child needs. We also have started, we're very lucky to have a new guided reading library to establish small reading groups focusing on reading comprehension. And the way that that's going to be done is something that's called tiered instruction. And tiered instruction is just basically looking at a response to intervention. It's a way of being able to target children at their instructional levels and be able to work with them in very small groups. And this is going to be done for 40 minutes each day, well, 4 days a week, not Friday, but 4 days a week, 40 minutes per grade level, and that is going to be done by the Title I staff, the reading specialist staff, as well as the classroom teachers. And the main focus of that is to be able to provide very small group instruction at instructional needs, which means that we've identified the needs that each of these children have. In addition to that, it also helps that if during tiered instruction, some of those children will be receiving instruction outside of their classroom during that 40 minutes, which allows classroom teachers to then be able to focus on children who have certainly at average, if even above average, and be able to push on to their skills and be able to accelerate their reading strengths as well. And we're going to be using something that we call AimsWeb, and AimsWeb it's a tracking program. We are going to be able to use that in order to view and track student progress. Up until now, it was a way that we were using, some teachers and some administrators were using it. Now it's going to be, we're actually going to be trained on the early release day on the 7th of October. That is one of the things that we're going to be doing. So we're going to be training all teachers in that so that they are able to now track all their benchmarks, all of their assessments, everything that they do in language arts, and really be able to look at what are the consistencies and the inconsistencies that we're seeing in their scores. And by doing this, hopefully be able to really target quickly and immediately the areas that we see that need growth. And hopefully by that we will be able to improve the scores. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Tripp. I'm a secondary English language arts coordinator.
Come a little closer.
I know you don't like it, we got to get used to it.
As you look at the slide or in your packets, I'm not sure how large that print is in there, but you will see the data from 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 English language arts MCAS for 2011. And I want to draw your attention to the performance ratings of both the middle school and the high school. They're both very high. That is the highest performance rating you can achieve. For both schools, the composite proficiency index is above 91. Over the last years, we have steadily increased our CPI. I went back into a 3-year span to give you an example. So in 2008, at the middle school, we had a CPI of 87 and currently 92. At the high school, for the same grades year span, 87.4 to 94.2. Given this steady growth, however, as both Dr. Colley and Dr. Condon have mentioned, we did not make AYP in the aggregate and low-income subgroups at the high school, nor the special needs subgroup at the middle school. Thank you. However, our students have demonstrated ability to read complex text as they consistently perform at or above state averages. We currently are zeroing in on increasing the balance of nonfiction to fiction text in our curriculum as the Common Core frameworks has done so. We know the reading and writing of nonfiction must be a shared responsibility across all disciplines. Thus, we work this summer to educate teachers of ELA and the teachers of content areas on the literacy frameworks in social studies, science, and technical subjects. Our vocabulary development remains close to state average with variance from one question to the next, so we will analyze these standards and the question demands closely, as we will questions on style and language. Our writing composition scores were 1 point off the state average in grades 7 and 10. Our most needy students need support in using strategies to organize and develop their writing. To have continued performance growth, Tier 1, the general education instruction, must be strong and rigorous, and Tier 2 and 3 must be comprehensive and cohesive. We continuously work towards improvement. For example, our grade 6 teachers attended a two-day conference in New Hampshire offered by Irene Fontes, a top literacy expert. This was followed by a 10-week study group which further investigated literacy practices. Our grade 5 teachers participated in an 8-week study group this summer on student-centered practices, promoting engagement and deeper thinking by exploring the units by Lucy Calkins, another literacy expert. Next Monday, the high school faculty meeting will focus on MCAS analysis. So our work from this spring and summer will continue throughout the year. Okay. This slide shows existing general education services at both schools. The addition of a reading teacher at the high school will expand our support services. The addition of a writing course will strengthen our Tier 1 instruction in ELA. I'd like to investigate the possibilities of an additional writing course considered at the middle school. We did pilot writing tutorials last year at the middle school, offered by our general education teachers, but a combination of both will offer more time on writing instruction, strengthening our students' ability in writing. So as we continue, Dr. Qualley has already mentioned, we're continuing to align our units of study to the Massachusetts Common Core frameworks. This is built into our professional development plan for the year. This is powerful work in creating a rigorous curriculum. All of our schools are now doing this work. This past summer, I had the benefit of attending the ASCD conference in Boston, along with teachers from the high school, principal from the high school, Dr. Condon, Dr. Cawley, and the other curriculum coordinators, and it let us learn from experts in the field about understanding for design, curriculum mapping, differentiated instruction, all deepening our understanding. And through this continued professional development, or through our continued professional development, and professional learning communities, this knowledge is going to be shared across our staff. So our focus on instruction and the research-based literacy practices needs to continue through exposure to the expertise and the analysis of our existing infrastructure so that we can support this work. We will address through multiple initiatives already begun. They're in front of you on your in your packet and also on this slide to advance our students' achievement. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Juliana Pacetto. I'm the elementary math coordinator and the principal over at Macomber. So in looking at the elementary scores, I wanted to focus on the open response. And if you'll notice in grade 3, the average score was higher in 2011 as compared to 2010. The highest score that they can get on the open response in grade 3 is 2 points, whereas it progressively goes to 4 points for grades 4 and up on open response questions. And we went a little bit down in grade 4, as you can see, with everybody else talking about grade 4 as well. So there might have been some things that we needed to change with that. Overall, we were higher in the state average for all but one open response, and that was grade 3 in mathematical inferences. And we are looking at working on a unit-based instruction on inferences in order to gain some more knowledge of that. We are going to continue to work with open response in the classrooms and do some looking at student work during grade level meetings. And what we do is basically they have one open response that they do, and then we take it back at grade level meetings, and all the teachers share, and we kind of form a rubric as to how we can better inform our instruction from there. So basically, with math improvement, what we're looking at doing this year is focusing on number sense in 2011 and 2012 due to the new frameworks that everyone's been talking about. One of the things that I wanted to mention was that now there is the Department of Education has come out with a specific plan of what they are going to be assessing. They're called the assessable standards for every grade level. So we're really going to try to focus on that, those assessable standards this year. They just released the ones for next year last week as well. So the unit plans are going to be created in number sense. Actually, they already have been for grades 3 and 4. We are going to also look at doing some standard-specific testing items given weekly, kind of like a packet, but going over some MCAT-style questions as well as teaching our students how to do some test-taking strategies. I know that you've all heard about Galileo in the past, and we're going to continue utilizing that and utilizing the testing data during the common planning time. And finally, we did create a math common assessment calendar just so that the teachers, because I am at Macomber, so that the teachers have a bit of an easier time as to figure out when their assessments are going to be due. I just wanted to say one more thing that I didn't add in my slide. Is that okay? We're looking also, as everybody else is, with RTI and Tier 2, we're kind of revamping the Tier 2 interventions so that they are included in the classroom, and where the teachers and the teachers' assistants collaborate on what each student needs to improve their instruction. And I'll just introduce Matt.
Hi, Matt Gerard, the secondary math coordinator, also high school math teacher. Looking at the middle and high school MCAS, just looking at what really stands out there. First of all, the positives, 5th and 6th grade. 5th grade being 15% over the state average is quite impressive. 6th grade, 13 percentage points over their previous year's scores. Those two jumped out right away. But as far as where we need to focus in analyzing, especially the 8th grade and the 10th grade math scores, it was noticeable that we did as good or better than the state on all 6 short answer at the 8th grade and 3 out of 4 short answer questions at the high school level. I see this as a real positive because you can't guess your way past a short answer question. At least it's pretty difficult to. I think this is an indication that some of the work that we've done to bolster students' basic math skills has begun to pay off. However, when you look at our open response questions, we did as good as or better than the state, only on 1 out of 4 in the 8th grade and 0 out of 6 at the high school level. So, as a matter of fact, at the high school level, there was a question where 60% of our students got either 0 or 1 point. Now 0 out of 4, it's possible 4. Unfortunately, we can't tell if it was because they left it blank or they tried it and got a 0 on it. But still, that statistic definitely stands out. Dr. Condon wanted me to talk a little bit about 8th grade algebra, now that we're a few years into that, and how maybe that's had an impact on the MCAS scores. I don't really see that it has. I think those students that are taking the 8th grade algebra are certainly getting the advanced scores on the MCAS in 10th grade. But in the past, those particular students would have certainly gotten proficient or advanced anyway. The focus, I think, as we'll talk about on the next slide, I think needs to be on bringing the rest of the students up to proficient and advanced. The one thing that I do think has the 8th grade algebra has affected is the SAT scores, which for the first time this year, we are over 500 in math and verbal. And if you look at our top 10 or top 20 students, they're quite a bit higher than that, even with our top 10 averaging over 600 in math, which is pretty impressive when you look at previous year's scores. In addition to that, this is our first year with AP Calculus at the high school, something that certainly several years ago wasn't possible. But now with the 8th grade algebra, those students that are coming up, we're finding are prepared to tackle the AP Calculus. Next slide here is initiatives. Obviously, we want to continue positive work at the 5th and 6th grade. 6th grade, as well as the 5th grade did last year, but the 6th grade this year will start using Galileo. So that timely feedback on their students is very important. We're not talking about months down the road, just several days where they can see, or weeks where they can see where their students are and possibly remediate at that point and bring them back up to where they should be as the school year is still progressing. Nancy spoke about our curriculum work, and certainly in mathematics that's the case as well. Our new shift to our units and our understanding by design unit planning really emphasizes inquiry-based teaching, higher order thinking skills. We're hopeful that will translate or help to translate into better scores on the MCAS on those open response questions as we shift more toward those higher order skills and get students used to reading these types of problems that those scores will improve over the next several years. In addition, Alex Simonello has instituted a math lab into the 6th grade schedule for certain students, so hopefully that will bring them up more to the level where they should be at that age and then be able to progress in the subsequent years. This particular year at the high school, we've been able to introduce a new quarter course for algebra. These are for the freshmen, not for the freshmen that, or for the freshmen that took algebra already in 8th grade, but for the rest of them. This Intro to Algebra quarter is in addition to their normal algebra course. The algebra curriculum is very broad and dense and difficult, and this quarter course, we hope, will really help bring those students' basic skills up, take care of some of that summer slide that happens, really get them geared up for that main algebra curriculum. So in addition to that, obviously continued examination of the data. We look at all of these. We look at every question, item by item. For instance, that one I was speaking of earlier was on transformations in Cartesian plane, where you have a triangle that's reflected over different axes, and you're supposed to sketch it, explain a little bit about why it moves the way it does in a coordinate plane. Pretty surprised that our students didn't do as well on that question. So we're going to go back and look. I think maybe we've shifted some of that from our geometry curriculum toward the end of the year, and we might have to re-examine where we put certain things in our own sequence at the high school. Thank you.
So you're all done? Okay.
That's all done.
Tony?
Dr. Conlon, I'm not sure, was it last year in the elementary they started, I forget the name, the new math, the new way of teaching the math. What was that? With the blocks.
Yeah, they put some blocks in, we put some manipulatives in last year.
That was something we started last year,
Yes.
correct? For the whole elementary?
End of the previous year and into the summer and last year.
Do you think that had a negative effect on the
I don't think
fourth
so,
grade math?
no. I mean, it's just use of manipulatives. The only thing I did think about is that sometimes when you try something new, sometimes it takes people's time away from. But no, I can't, because it's pretty standard to use manipulatives. I think, like, I wouldn't discount any new initiative can have a little bit of effect, but I wouldn't think, there should be no reason, because that's good practice, and most people already do that. So, like I said, but you don't completely discount the fact that when people do something new, sometimes they do a little bit less of something they've been doing before, and so the first year you can have a bit of an impact. But I think it would have had to have been multiple things that would have affected the math that much. And I would hope that people wouldn't take that as a reason. I don't think they would take it as a reason to move away from that, because with the new state standards, we really have to work on developing that number sense from the very lowest grade levels. And you need to use concrete materials to do that.
Jim?
When do the parents get the individual student scores reported to them?
The scores have been sent to the schools, so I think it will just be a matter of when the schools send it out. They sometimes they'll include it in a mailing or something else that they're sending, or they'll put it together with something else. So I'd have to ask each individual school. They have them now, and I would imagine they're going to be giving them out within a week or so, would be my guess.
Okay, thank you.
The algebra kids at the high school that Mr. Gerard was saying, the quarter class that you're doing, and for those that may not know, that would be what, the 9-week class?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are those students, which the regular one is 18, right? You've got the 18-week,
That's right.
half the year, so that's an additional 9 weeks in addition. Are those students being placed in that class, or are they taking it as an elective? Are they being recommended for that class? Are we looking at certain students and saying, we need you to take this, or what exactly is that?
It is the regular curriculum. It's an extra term for the students.
So it's included in,
It's
when
part
they
of the
take
regular
algebra,
one.
then that just comes along with the
That's right.
territory?
That's
Okay.
right. It's not a remedial.
Dr. Conlon, the MCAS scores and the state averages, is there a way to break that down, or does the state break it down as far as urban areas and suburban districts versus urban school districts?
On occasion, the state, through their Educational Accountability Office, has grouped people and compared them, comparable districts, but they don't automatically do that. I mean, you can go in anyone can go in and group the urban districts, which of course do not, in general, do not do as well as the suburban or the rural districts. It's just the nature of things. So sometimes when we've had like EQA audits here, the state has provided us with that, but in their public presentations, they don't do that. But as I said, individual districts can do that. They can look at all scores for all districts are online and can be looked at. The state doesn't rank, though. It doesn't put out a ranking.
Mike, do you have anything? Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Dr. Condon, and thank you to the rest of you that helped present. Thank you. Update on school improvement plans.
No, I was going to move that.
Mrs. Tudelo, who's joining us tonight as our secretary since Karen is not here.
Just want to make sure she can be heard.
Last spring, we did present a school improvement plan, so the plan you have in front of you tonight includes the update to that plan based upon some of the information we have since then. So in the area of student achievement assessment, you'll notice that underneath goal number 2, where we talked about analyzing the MCAS scores, based upon the review of the scores, that's the increase we're aiming for in our students that in the subgroups that did not reach proficiency. So we're striving for an increase of 6% in ELA, 7% in math, and 4% in intro to physics. Also under student achievement assessment, as you heard earlier, our SAT scores, our average SAT scores did improve, and one of the things that does make a difference for students, I'm on page 22. One of the things that does make a difference in SAT scores is taking the PSATs, and through a grant that Dr. Condon received for us this year, we will be able to offer all sophomores and juniors the opportunity to take the PSATs at no cost during the school day. So that is set for October 12th, Wednesday. And all parents were notified by mail, so all they have to do is sign their child up, and that's an opportunity for them to take the PSAT scores. On page 23, underneath student achievement, again in the area of assessment, we have been working on Common Task for several years. So in red, what you see is a list of the existing courses that have a Common Task assessment attached to them, and that continues on to number 2, which is also the mid-course common assessment that is administered in those grades. Going on to page 25, we have started to develop units of study at the high school. This is critical for us in terms of our NEASC accreditation visit. And so there you have an inventory of the units that have been developed to date, and we continue to work on those units this year. We had a summer institute, going to work on them during some of our professional development days this year, and hopefully we will continue with another institute next year. On page 28, in the area of student achievement instruction, once again, looked at the MCAS scores and some of the questions where we were significantly below the state average and which standard was linked to those questions, and those are the areas where we're really going to focus this year. On page 29 starts the core value area of school climate, and going on to page 30, you'll see several goals have been added in the area of school climate, particularly as it relates to interventions that will be done by the classroom teacher versus those that will be handled by the assistant principal. And these are goals that Mrs. Antonelli has established this year for herself as well, in terms of more collaboration with teachers, with students, with parents, and trying to stop especially the repeat offenders from the same things over and over again. Page 31, school resources, as we look to enhance our opportunities. Last year, through a grant with the Westport Education Foundation, we were able to train teachers to begin offering the AP Calculus course, and that will begin in November of this year and run until June. And then on page 32, we have introduced a writing course. You heard some mention in the ELA reports of the need for strengthening writing. So all freshmen are taking a quarter course in writing. In addition, they're taking that extra term of algebra, and in grade 9, they're taking that extra term of physical science. Collaborative partnerships on page 32 and 33. Our goal would be to maintain the ones we have and look to grow those and expand to other opportunities where possible.
Any comments from Mrs. Tudelo? Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Simonello, you're at Westport Middle School.
How we doing?
Hi.
How are you?
How are you doing?
Good. As Mrs. Tudelo said, the plan that you have in front of you is basically the same plan as it was that you looked at it in the spring, with some additions that we looked at over the summertime at the administrative retreat and whatnot. If you look on page 6, which is goal number 1, and hopefully your copy has something in red. The red is the addition on the side. Sorry. Do you want to switch with mine? Because mine's
No,
red.
I can read this.
You
one.
sure?
Yep, thanks.
The red are the additions that we made after looking at MCAS scores, looking at the district improvement plan, and things that we needed to do within the school. That first goal talks about how will the middle school achieve AYP in MCAS, and you heard from Dr. Condon and all of the curriculum coordinators about what we will be doing. The middle school will be looking at those subgroups and percentages that we need to improve within those subgroups to reach AYP, and those are our goals that you'll find on the next page. The middle school went through an exercise in the very beginning part of the school year to identify targeted students, looking at their MCAS scores and looking at grades, attendance, and things like that. And those are the kids who will fit into those subgroups. And any of those other kids who we did not target throughout the school year will also fit into those, and will work on improving their scores, not only in the MCAS, but also in school. If you look at goal 2, which is page 8, this is in regard to the units of study and what we need to do to achieve the district's goal. We also need to infuse, as Dr. Conley mentioned, the common assessments within each unit of study in each discipline. If you look on the next page and the pages after, those are the units of study broken down per discipline, per grade. The amount of units in each grade level. For example, English language arts in grade 5, there are 5 units. 4 are in progress. 1 will be completed later, and 2 they have updated with the Common Core. And as you read through those and go down by the grade level, and the next page talks about the art, physical education, and music programs, and where they are in their units of study, and what we look to accomplish. Moving on to page 12, goal number 4. This looks at our the offerings of clubs and sports within the school day. And the chart on the next page talks about the clubs that we did expand. We have a new, thanks to a grant that Dr. Condon had written, we have a robotics club which will be teaming up with BCC. The Westport Education Foundation has given us money to expand our math teams, so we will have a math team in grade 5, 6, and 7. They will not compete like the grade 8 math team and the official math team for the middle school does in the Massasoit Leagues, but they will be a time for students who are very good in math and enjoy math to expand their knowledge and their workings with math. There's a science fair club. I do believe that's the 7th, 8th, which is 8th grade science fair club. What they will be doing is participating in a science fair, a middle school science fair. They will conduct their own science fair within the school. They will work on a project. It's basically something that's going to be done at home. I'm very excited about this. These students will find an experiment that they want to do. They'll research it. They'll come up with the experiment. They'll do it. And then we will have a science fair within the building. Those top students then will go on to a science fair for middle schools. Program that's been around for many years. We were part of it, I guess, probably 5 or 6 years ago, which is my understanding was in the building, and now we're just trying to bring it back. It's a great program. 2 teachers, Mr. Chico and Ms. Therio, are very excited about running this.
It's also being funded by the Education Foundation, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes, Education Foundation also do that. And also, the Education Foundation is doing some literature clubs. They're doing some literature clubs, 2 book clubs, one in 5-6 and one in 7-8, and also a writers guild in grade 8, and both funded by the Westport Education Foundation. In sports, in speaking with Ms. Donovan, who is now our athletic director as well, we're looking at a possibility of increasing our sports at the middle school, a fall sport for girls, which would be girls volleyball. There are a lot of girls who get cut from either soccer, cut from either field hockey, and it would be a great feeder program for the high school. Nobody's using the gymnasium at the time, so it all kind of works into play. So we're going to be investigating that throughout the school year. Goal number 5, talks about school climate within the building, and one thing I'd like to add to this is the assistant principal and myself will be conducting a discipline committee. We'll be holding a discipline committee just to look at the school discipline and behavior, and kind of getting some of that data that Dr. Colley was looking for to determine different aspects and different programs within the school. It's something new that we tried. Many other high schools and middle schools have the same program, and it's very effective. Last one is the last goal on page 15 is our collaborative partnerships. And if you look on the next page, you'll see the different school partners that the middle school does have. And next to it is what happens because of the partnership with them. And we will always be looking for new partners and whatnot. So, yes. Any questions? Any thoughts?
Anybody? No?
Things looking up at the middle school? Kids are happy?
Yes, yes it is. We had an excellent open house last night. It was very well attended. The parents who I spoke to had some really good things to say about the programs and the activities that the teachers were speaking to them of. And we had, Colley and myself held a 30-minute question and answer period about the building, and it was very well attended. Parents with some very good questions, very pleased with the direction that we're going with the building. So, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gastal. Now, how do you say that? Gastal? Gastal, okay. Get that right. We haven't done that. Flip it.
Carry on.
Welcome. the new principal at the elementary school. So how's it going?
Good. I just want to take a moment to highlight some of the changes we've made. The page is not really numbered, but if you consider that the top of page 1, if you look on page 4, there's an area that's highlighted, something similar to what's already been said. We're going to look to increase the subgroup scores for math and ELA by 5% in progressing toward the AYP. We're also looking to reduce the needs improvement in following categories in math and ELA by 5%. Some of the ways that we're going to try to do that have been discussed, and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. We're going to be talking about the common assessments of the units of study. We're going to provide teachers time to analyze data and to implement curriculum changes. We're just going to try to reconfigure the way that some of the things are presented. On page 7, if you continue along, it's some of the units of study we have in place and the common assessments. As you can see, that's a definite work in progress, so there's going to be a lot of time spent on that. One of our first grade level days is going to be spent entirely on that. On page 9, under student achievement and instruction, there's a number of initiatives that are highlighted. We're going to be implementing running record assessments to obtain instructional reading levels for all students. That's going to be done in the classroom by the classroom teachers as well as the reading specialists and Title I assistants. We have now a new guided reading library that Mrs. Staskowitz had mentioned. It's quite the thing to see. We're going to be utilizing that on a regular basis. Dr. Condon provided us with a nice bookshelf that's been set up in a manner that's going to be easy for the teachers to take books out and return them and to utilize it to its fullest capacity. We also are going to be having biweekly progress monitoring on all students at risk of a low grade level in reading fluency. We're going to be utilizing the Ames Web to monitor the reading comprehension and written language, and also to monitor numeracy and mastery of number facts. And as Mrs. Staskowitz had mentioned, we're going to be having the RTI process in full effect. The Tier 3 is going to be dealing with the students with the greatest need. Tier 1, not quite as much, and the Tier 2, and the Tier 1 would be the classroom instruction. The next page, we also have a couple of areas that are highlighted in the light. If you don't have the color, in the upper left-hand corner, we're looking to provide additional training and differentiated instruction strategies for all teachers in both ELA and math. Differentiated instruction being a key component because not all the students in the classroom are going to be able to function at the same level, so we want to make sure that we hit all their abilities and help them to achieve their full potential. And also at the bottom of that page, we're going to have training for all teachers in the comprehensive toolkits, Dibbles Next, and Dibbles Days. Dibbles had been mentioned earlier once again by Mrs. Staskowitz, and we're going to be taking that to another level with the Dibbles Days, which is going to be addressed in the comprehension. School climate, we're going to be continuing with the responsive classroom. It's something that I'm kind of in the learning process with, and I think it's a great program. The students, when they take a break and get some time to reflect on what they've done, I've seen some positive influence on their behaviors in the short time that I've been at the school. And I think that's a real positive step, and we're also addressing on the next page the anti-bullying to make the students realize, and sometimes at the elementary school it's a little different to get them to realize what is bullying and what is not. And there's a lot of nice programs in place, and we're looking to further that. On page, what I would call page 13, continuing along with the collaborative partnerships, I'm happy to announce that we have a new partnership with the Feinstein Foundation from Rhode Island. Alan Sean Feinstein is a philanthropist who I had dealt with in Tiverton, and when I told him that I was leaving, he agreed to come to Westport, and will be the first Massachusetts school, to the best of my knowledge, that's going to be in the program. He was very generous with us in the past. He would provide opportunities to do a newsletter and express our good deeds, and we can get $1,000 per newsletter, and there were 2 per year. He also set up a community fund. Can't guarantee that he'll do that here, but I hope that he would. But we could provide needy families with Stop and Shop gift cards during holidays, winter coats, hats, mittens, anything along the lines, glasses, trips to the dentist that students may need. And the other partnership that I'm pretty excited about is the Education Foundation. I met with the representatives the other day, and it's listed on our partnership page. They're going to be providing us with the opportunity to run literacy clubs, book clubs, poetry slams. We're going to be conducting a grade 4 math Olympiad, a 3rd and 4th grade musical, and Destination Imagination for grades 3 and 4. And the folks were very positive, and we're looking forward to an opportunity to work with them. overall, I mean, this is kind of something that was put together really quickly. I wasn't that familiar with it, having walked in. I just wanted to take a moment of your time to express my gratitude and satisfaction and pleasure to be at the school. It's a wonderful staff. We had a tremendous amount of people at the open house. We had over 100 volunteers who were looking to work in the school and to help us out. It's just a wonderful climate that's been created, and my goal, I'm kind of getting off the beaten path here, is to continue what we have and to make it better.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for him?
I'd just like a heads up before the poetry slam at the elementary school. I'd like to go to that.
Sounds good. Will do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Pacetto, again, we'll see you again.
Okay, so, okay, this is my first time. All right, talking about, in going along with the district improvement plan that Dr. Holly has, Manchester School last year had this combined school improvement plan with Westport Elementary School. This year, I created a new school improvement plan to address some of the issues and things that we needed to talk about over at the Manchester. So it might be, it's completely new to you, so bear with me. All right. When talking about assessment and enlisting the different common assessments that we have, the school does have a lot of common assessments to complete. The teachers have been working on doing this for years and years and years. So it's just a matter of updating a lot of them. We also do the dibbles there as well, and we're going to be using AimsWeb to track that also. When we're talking about the Common Core goes down to preschool and kindergarten as well. So what we need to do is revise our report card to reflect the Common Core standards throughout those grade levels. One thing that we are looking at is getting some kind of math assessment for the kindergarten level so that we have some way of tracking how students are doing. So last year I created one on my own, but I'm not sure if it addresses the students' needs at the time, so it's more of a numeracy issue, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That's one of the things that, as the math coordinator also, I'm going to be looking at. We did get a grant last year, excuse me, for a program called Read It Once Again, and the preschool and the kindergarten teachers were both trained in that, and it's a complete curriculum, and it focuses on well-known books, but they have a very multi-sensory feel to them. They address different issues. It goes, like, for example, the Brown Bear, What Do You See book, or Very Hungry Caterpillar. It talks about that book, and it goes through math, English, science, social studies standards, as well as some artistic standards, and there's common assessments in there, and we're looking at that, using that to focus on enhancing reading in different interventions as well for the preschool and the kindergarten grades. So when looking at our curriculum, we have a lot of units in progress. One of the things that we're looking at doing right now is, and I'm sure you've heard many of us talk about NAYC, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and that's the accreditation that is currently in progress right now. They should be coming anywhere from February 1st until July 1st. So we're looking at aligning the curriculum with the NAYC standards, and there's 10 standards, anywhere from health, instruction, things of that nature. Moving on to instruction, the tiered instruction that, as I spoke previously to about with the Read It Once Again program, we're also trying to come up with a package, so to speak, of developmentally appropriate learning experiences for each student that goes through the kindergarten and the preschool grade level. There's different cognitive domains that are important to the learning experiences that kind of give that good foundation for the students. Moving on to school climate, one of the things that is required is that we all have to be CPR and first aid trained, so we are actually doing that in November. We have 2 teachers now that have been trained in responsive classroom at Tier 1. We also do have the second step curriculum, which is the anti-bullying curriculum that Mrs. Harrington does, and which moves us to collaboration and partnership. Fortunately, Dr. Colley had provided us with some information about Barnes & Noble, and I followed up with them, and luckily for me, they have costumes there, so I'm very excited about dressing up as the very hungry caterpillar this year. Maybe reading to some of the students in the kindergarten and preschool classrooms. So I was really thrilled about that.
I don't know about that one.
When will you do it?
I will be sure to let you all know.
I was going to say, you want to know about that one too?
That's awesome.
We'll all dress up. I'll be the butterfly.
You'll all dress up?
I'll be the butterfly.
Okay.
Maybe.
I will. Eric's giving me the look.
With personal growth, one of the things that I wanted to focus on was a curriculum-based evening per quarter, like a multicultural night. We did some things last year, and I know Lee Supermarket does some things with us, but I wanted to do some more, evening fun type activities that go along with maybe a literacy-based night or a math-based night. And the resources next year, just something to think about, how we're going to talk about class size at the end of the year. And we have no idea what our projected income is based on not income, but our projected census would be for our kindergarten next year, so that's just something that we have to think about in the back of our minds.
What are we averaging this year for kindergarten?
156 students.
class.
We have 25, we currently just got a 26th kid in last week. And everybody's at 25 though. And there's 6
one at
classrooms.
26.
Yep. So just something to keep in the back of our mind.
And last year we were,
Last year, we were 23, 24, 22, and there were 5 classrooms. So
Was what, 120?
it was 122 last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, our preschool's not as big, and, we had to move around teachers, but I think it's just something to think about. I'm not sure what the census is for 5-year-olds, so we'll get a feel for that over the next couple of months, just to keep in the back of our mind whether we have to go to 5 or stay at 6. I'm not sure.
I just have a question, and it's just something that's come up in the community a few times, just from them specifically. Have you thought about contacting for collaboratives, the Council on Aging?
Yes, it's not in there. We do we already are a partner with them, but it's not a new partner. It's not
okay.
We do the food pantry around the same time.
Okay, so you do have a partnership with them as
Yes.
well? Okay. Any other?
Do they still do the multicultural dinner where everyone brings?
That's what I'm bringing back.
Okay, good.
good idea.
Bringing it back, Mr. Larry.
That was always fun.
Good.
Any other questions or
More than
comments?
happy to help you.
Just a general, how did the kindergarten transition in this year?
Wonderfully. We had some cryers, more parents than kids, but for the most part, it was very good.
Good. Okay.
I'd ask you if there's any trouble on the bus, but I already know that.
Absolutely no trouble whatsoever on buses.
Thank you. On to the middle school update, Dr. Colley.
As many people have found out, as of last week, we were waiting on results for some of the areas that we had closed off due to high levels. The offices, the cafeteria, the kitchen. By the end of this week, we were able to notice that the cafeteria, the kitchen had actually come down. We did some cleaning, we did some ventilation, and it seems to have done the trick in there. We noticed that we hadn't tested the areas around the loading dock area. We still have some materials in there that are Tectum. It's kind of where they stopped the work because they ran out of time when we wanted to open the school. What we did is an interim measure, which was to cover the Tectum with plastic. We still did the cleaning, and basically we tested that, and recently we got those back, and they were in about the 100 to 250 range. So basically the cafeteria, the kitchen, that area, in terms of the air quality has come down below the levels of the EPA. We also recently, and you have some information, additional information that I emailed you. Now it's on your blotters over there. We did get the analysis of the different compounds that we have identified in the air of the school, and there are some slight differences between what we have and what the EPA used in order to derive their thresholds. So basically the recommendation is that perhaps we can move that standard up at least 20 points to 320 instead of 300. Once the EPA takes a look at it, they may actually let it go up a little higher, but I feel confident that at 320 it would be safe. So I did provide you with a new map, which I color-coded, and again, as I did last night, I apologize for the coloring. I probably should go back to kindergarten to stay within the lines. But as you see, the teacher's dining room is at 310, and actually the principal's office, which I want to talk a little bit about, actually came down through 320, and basically all we did in that area was to ventilate it. That originally we went back and took a look at the previous maps and the previous actual reports, and we found out that's really the room that was one of the highest in the building, was at 1,300. So it came down 1,000 points, 1,000 nanograms to about 320, just from ventilating. We were trying to see what were the issues in that area, because we did clean them originally and tested them. They still came up high. So we closed them off and then did at least three things. We took one room where we basically did nothing. We just went back in and tested it again after a couple of weeks of letting it sit. The principal's office, like I said, all we did is put some ventilating units there, because it's not like in the rooms where you have a very open area and one exchange unit that blows air in and out through the wall. Here you have units that go up through the ceiling, and they may not be in the same room. So what they did is they undercut the doors to allow some ventilation to happen through the doors. So we have some concerns about how quickly we could move air in and out of that whole space that has the offices in order to see any results. Because again, once you get the materials out that have the PCBs in it, you shouldn't be seeing such high numbers. The third thing we did is we went into one of the guidance offices and we removed the carpet, ventilated for 24 hours. We did a few other things. We sealed the brick around the windows. We sealed the internal windows. That we didn't know if it was going to do anything, but instead what it did was it went from 500 to 1,000. Our collective thinking is that the carpets over time have collected dust, and as much as you want to try to clean the carpets and vacuum them, and when you start ripping them up, our concern is that we may be kicking it up into the air. So when we ripped it out and we didn't really give it enough time for it to be vented out or settle, we actually saw a spike. Because in the two rooms next door, the one room where we did nothing, it went from about 900 to 600 with doing nothing. So my guess is some of this is in the air settling down to the carpet and staying there. So when we went into the guidance counselor's office and ripped it up, we just disturbed it all and didn't give it enough time to vent. The room next door, again, we didn't do anything other than a quick vacuum and then vent it out the window, and that came down significantly. So we're thinking, and one of the things that I wanted to ask tonight was, should we just preventative take out the carpets, put down tile, and then ventilate those areas that still had carpets in them, retest just to make sure they came down? Obviously we could just try to ventilate, do nothing to the carpets, and then just see where they come back at. Ventilating some of the areas may be easier than others. The ones in the office, we may be able to get enough ventilation to, capture what's in the area and blow it out. The same thing with the areas where the server room and the offices, the office for the media center in the back there are. we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do with room 24, which is one of the music rooms, because it really has no access to outside windows. So if we do anything, we may have to do more cleaning, more ventilation. We may have to give it some time because there's only a little duct that goes out through the roof, and it's only so much air you can exchange through there. So that one's still a question. But for now, whether we take out the carpets or not is a question. Obviously, there's a cost associated with it. We can take it out the window, bag it, get rid of it. It's not a source material, so we can just dispose of it. But the question is, do we want to go through the expense, or do we want to vent, test, give it some time, test again to see if the levels come up or down?
Eric?
Was there any mastic on the floor holding the rug in place? Any of the, so it could be a source material? Okay.
That was my thought.
But in the other rooms, just to answer that quick, in the other rooms where we took out the carpet and put tile, we saw it drop way down. So again, it's one of those things. Do we go looking for it, or just remove it and put tile, clean, ventilate, test again?
And your follow-up? Oh, you had a second.
My
Go ahead.
original question. The one thing that people are really picking up on every time they hear you talk about is ventilation. I know we've talked about it in the past that in the wintertime we're going to open the windows, crank the heat, and do all of that. A few suggestions that I'd like to see if we could possibly do it, using an absolute third-party testing. The people that tested the Talbot Middle School, because they just went through this last week when they were closed, of letting an outside party come into the school, pick 3 random classrooms. On a Friday afternoon, seal it off. Monday morning, when it hasn't been ventilated, because everyone was worried about the ventilation, of course you need a low sample because it's ventilated. When we get into the winter months, we might not have all the windows open. Seal the room off on a Friday. On a Monday morning, come in, test the room, and see what the levels are at, without all this blowing everything out and having fans running, because fans aren't going to be running when the kids are in the classroom. And that's what the parents are really hanging their hat on, is all this ventilation. The kids are in class, windows are closed. So is it possible to get at least a base study on what it would be like to have the room sitting for a whole weekend? They come into class on Monday morning. What are the levels at? Are we spiking? Are we whatever might be happening?
We got 2 issues. One, the ventilation is never going to be off, even in the winter. There may be less ventilation.
You can have the ventilation running, but
Right.
I mean sealed to where no one goes into the room. Monday morning they test it
we
without all
can
the
do
windows open, because we're not going to leave windows open at night.
No.
Climbing through.
I get the windows closed, but the ventilating system does continually bring in
That's fine,
outside
because that
air.
will simulate
Right.
class on Monday morning.
We can do that.
Okay.
I think just to say a couple things about that is, number one, when we're doing the testing and the ventilation, we are ventilating after a major disturbance. That's what's taking time to remove the materials. We're using negative pressure machines to increase the ventilation with filtration to remove that material. All of the rooms in green where we actually did that work, that was well after that ventilation process had been done, and basically the systems are operating in essentially normal mode for the building. The ventilation systems don't turn off unless they go into setback mode, and the school has made a decision to basically leave those systems running continuously. But again, this ventilation process we're doing is really to remove contaminants in the air after such a major disturbance.
I think that's what the parents needed to hear, because all they hear is ventilation, ventilation, ventilation. They're saying, well, my kids sit in the class and the windows are closed, so are the levels changing? So if that answers the parents, then that's fine.
Mr. Sullivan?
I have a statement. Statement, it's not a question. We heard about collective thinking, recognizing that tearing out a carpet may raise some dust and may affect the tests. I don't know who those collective thinkers are, but I think we ought to evaluate who was thinking about ripping out a carpet and being surprised that dust was raised. In addressing the question that was put forward to the school committee, should we continue to do things such as rip out carpet? Should we continue? What should we do? I would need to know how much money we've spent and the effect of doing that. I don't think I can speculate as one person on what would happen if we took out carpet and put in tile. I think we need a proposal, we need to know how much more money we're going to spend, and certainly, if it's a room that's in the red zone, we've already authorized to go ahead and do whatever we can to achieve green status, and so going forward, I don't think we as a committee have the collective minds to start now to address steps to take to remediate any additional areas. So thank you for the time, Chairwoman. That's my statement.
Tony?
Have we retested any rooms that have been green, say, a month ago? Or
Do you want to come up to the table?
Yeah, you might.
You don't have to keep getting up and
I
down?
think it's important for parents, people at home to realize that the ventilating, like Bob said, goes on after the cleaning because we're stirring things up, but we have removed the source material, so, you know, we don't need that much ventilation anymore. The regular room ventilator should keep the air. I mean, there's no reason. The PCBs ain't going to come back into the school. We've removed them. We're just trying to get rid of what minute particles are still in the building.
So to answer your question, we have not gone back in and done any testing for other rooms as of yet. That was really going to be slated for the first quarter sampling that's coming up probably in a month or so, is what we anticipated doing. But we have been testing these areas, obviously, where we've had some high results in the ventilation and retesting, and again, you're seeing these concentrations drop. Some of the patterns that are starting to come up out, which my answer is to Sullivan's question, is the rooms where are red, 24 had carpet removed initially, 250, 251 actually still have carpet. Some of the areas to the right of the drawing, 268, those rooms actually had carpet removed. So again, we know carpet creates disturbance. What we tried to do is look at removing the source materials, such as carpet and sealing the brick, and gave 24 hours of ventilation. What we're able to see is that 24 hours is not enough to get those concentrations to come down that significantly, and that may actually help us understand why some of the earlier rooms that were in red had carpets removed, and it's going to take more time in ventilation to get those concentrations to come down, and that's what Dr. Cowley is talking about in the office areas, is that we can effectively remove the carpets, tile them, but we're going to need more time than 24 hours to get them clean and see the concentrations drop. Especially also, the other thing we have is that these areas also have a little bit of lack of ventilation. 24, 250, 251 actually draw their ventilation from the media center, which is clean, but in these rooms we can't get to come down because there's really no ventilation system in there. And the office area, again, exhausts but does not have an air system to draw it. So these few areas in red, what we have to deal with is creating ventilation, cleaning out the building, seeing those concentrations drop, and then being able to allow the building to act normally.
Just one answer for money. We do, we haven't received any additional invoices at this point. I know there'll be more coming. In terms of the tile versus carpet, I do know that at the beginning when we were talking about carpet removal and tile, I was seeing the numbers really high. When we first talked about it in, I want to say, the beginning of August, we did go out and ask people who do tiling to give us quotes. But when we first estimated how much it would cost to remove the carpet and put in tile, we had put into our numbers as a placeholder about $35,000. When the quotes came in, they were around 42 to 49 to remove all the carpet and tile it all. So that's why when we first were doing this and we were getting towards the end and I was seeing the numbers climb, we took the areas where the kids were going to be in, and those were the ones that we removed the carpets from. We left it in areas where we didn't expect kids to be in there for any length of time, like the offices, areas of that sort. So we left them trying to save a little bit of money. I'm just saying, we have spent a lot of money, and this I want to be very clear that when we said back in August that it'd be about $35,000, that was just a rough estimate before we went out and got quotes. When it came higher, I kind of try to keep it around the $35,000 limit. But if we do these areas and take out the rest of the carpets that remain in the building, which I'm recommending we do, it's going to be probably closer to 46.
Eric?
Two quick little questions. First one, Bob. When we go back into our quarterly test, what is that procedure going to look like? Are we going to go in and clean before we, or are we just going to show up, almost like what I just said? We're going to show up on a day and test the room and see what it comes back as. We're not going to do anything prior to it, correct?
Correct. The only thing is that I know the school goes through a regular cycle of changing out the filters, and certainly that should be done, and if we want to do it 24, 48 hours before we come. But essentially, we're going to be testing as conditions can be exposed to during the day. So with the systems running in the normal load.
Okay.
You said you had two. Do you have a second one?
Let him have his, and I'll go
Well,
back
Tony
to
had
it.
his hand up. Tony?
Whoever-
It's just as far as the removing the rug, because it is not a source material, and we can just put it out there for bid to
That's my point. We already did, so we know what the price would be. I just want to make sure people understand that this is beyond what we originally had thrown out as a ballpark figure. You know, the quotes came up higher than, and we took 3 quotes, so they came up higher than the 35 we expected originally.
Mr. Sullivan?
Again, my reflection is removing carpet, I would wait much longer than 24 hours before retesting, but that's my very personal approach to house cleaning, which has to do with chasing dust, and it's always in the air. So if it can settle down, and I know you have movement. Secondly, ventilation, I think that's the core issue in addressing the problem. I just want to clarify, because there was one comment made, we've removed the source material. Are we comfortable going ahead and confirming that statement, Mr. May? Have we removed the source material? And I know we've worked very hard at getting it out of there, but I think we still have ventilation issues. So if there's source material, number one, I look forward to hearing the congener report to find out what that material is and start to analyze that. I understand that's come forward. Some of that's left behind. Hopefully this report's going to help us understand what is in the building. And should we be looking, besides removing carpet and putting in tile, new ventilation systems? I don't think we have an adequate ventilation system in the building. As beyond the dead spots, I think in general, we may want to look to upgrade some of our air handling systems. Just a reflection more than a question.
That's fine.
Answer for that. Go ahead.
Just a couple of things. I do agree with Mr. Sullivan. When we did talk to the MSBA, one of the things we pointed out is the ventilation system in the building is old. It's original. I was just talking to Mike Dort today about could we control individual rooms. He says, no, this is not like the Macumber where he can sit in his office and dial in every single room and know what the temperature is and how much air exchange is going on. We can't do any of that in this building. It's not geared for that. Even the boiler system is old. So there's issues with the building. And just to go back to your question about removing the source material, I should qualify that. We removed the source material out of all the areas where the kids are. We did not remove source material out of the stairwells. And the loading dock area still has some source material that we covered. And that's, as far as I know, those are the main sources that remain in the building.
Correct, and glazing compound does exist, but
Oh,
it's been
right.
sealed.
It's in the
with
windows.
caulking material. So for any source material that we knew about, which was tested and determined to contain PCBs, has been addressed in some manner, with the exception of the areas that Dr. Cowley mentioned.
Just a very limited follow-up is the reason I bring that up is I feel that an improvement in the air circulation system, considering that we may want to draw it certain directions if there's a very limited encapsulated area, there may be protocol for dealing with it. That's why I bring that up, because it's part of the ongoing management of the building.
Eric?
Bob, have we noticed, when we first got our first proposal, a huge jump in the tonnage that we took out of the school? Because, reason being, if you looked in the back of the school, we had a lot of big rainstorms and those big plastic. I just drove by and said, my God, we're paying for tonnage of water. And we had some really big rain, and those things were uncovered And I don't know what happened when they actually dumped those bags that were lining the,
Yeah, that's
however
something-
many were in the back. I mean, I think we had a big overage on tonnage because of the rainwater.
That's something I'd have to look closely at those numbers, just to see if there's additional weight compared to earlier trailers that left the site. For the waste, you do pay two different types of pricing. One is obviously weight, but the other one is, but typically they're covered, they're usually only uncovered during loading periods when they do that, and that's not leaving it open all day. They usually open it up to load, and then they're covered up each night. So heavy periods of rain, that would be something I'd have to look into. I couldn't really answer that without
Just
spending some
curious on
time
it.
in the detail.
Someone brought it to my attention, I drove by and I'm like, yeah, they're absolutely right. We're pouring rain out and we're collecting a lot of tonnage.
I do have a question about that, and I don't know, just the few times I was in the building where they were removing this stuff, if I remember, or if what I saw is typical of what they did, a lot of it was wrapped in plastic, before they even took it out of the building and put it into the dumpsters. Was that all the material that came out? They would put it into bags and wrap it in plastic?
Correct. The material was containerized in the building onto what's called Gaylord boxes, basically, which were sealed. So the material itself didn't become wet and saturated, but it is possible the dumpster may have gotten some water in it. But again,
Because the dumpsters
are
were lined with
tight.
big green
Yeah, they are
trash
like a
bags, it
bathtub,
looked like, and they were
exactly.
heavy duty, so it was a bathtub. But if it rained, the source material wasn't collecting any of the water, it was just the actual bag itself was collecting a lot of water.
It's something we can look at and evaluate because we do have periods of time where there wasn't a lot of rain. We could actually go back and look at some of the weather reports and see what we got.
Just
But
curious if we had a real
I think
uppage
it's
in...
probably not a significant cause of increase. I know the major significant increase was the labor
Sure.
because of the amount of time and effort they had to spend after this 1 week period where they had blitzed this building pretty much with a significant workforce.
Tony?
Bob, the room 24, the music room. I don't remember exactly. I know we were there last week, but does that room vent straight up through the roof, through the ceiling and the roof, or does it go out over the hallway to the exterior of the building?
I'd have to look at the mechanical plans directly, but I believe it goes right to the roof because we actually tied into that system to try and exhaust that room, so we were not able to run flexible hose to run out a window because of the proximity of that room.
So there's already a cutout on that ceiling and that cement that we could maybe just update that unit.
We also noticed, Mike and I were talking about it today, the actual ventilator unit has several, registers, so there's quite a bit of piping, if you will, up in that ceiling that, perhaps we need to look at, clean, and then try to do some ventilating like you're suggesting. Again, it's not, let's do this tomorrow and fix it. It'll take a little bit of work in that room to get it done. But at least, we did see quite a decrease just over time. They went from 2,400 to 1,200. So will it continue to do that? I don't know how far. We may need more ventilation, like you're saying, and maybe take a look at that unit. But it is an old unit, and I don't know how well it exhausts.
Mr. May, I have a question for you. This is a question that's been directed at me a few times, and I'm hoping you can clarify. The procedure for testing the air in each classroom. It was brought to, I think, all of our attention that somebody felt testing was done with the windows open. How does this affect the test? Does it affect the test? Is that how it was done? Because I don't have this answer, and I don't think any of us do. And, we have people asking us these questions. I think in their heads they're thinking it's skewing the numbers, we're getting inaccurate results. We need to make sure that we are giving them the right numbers and that, hoping you can shed some light on that.
I think I've heard that question. Basically, the intent is to simulate real conditions. So real conditions would be if during a normal hot day you're going to open the windows, which teachers may do in the building. that's not really increasing. It's not forced ventilation like what we're talking about doing with the negative air machines.
Okay.
You basically have your regular air systems running, opening the windows to bring in fresh air is a normal course of action. That's what you're trying to represent with the air sampling that's done. With that said, we didn't purposely open windows and we didn't purposely close windows. And I understand that there was some windows open while we were doing testing after school had opened, where rooms may have been had windows open. We did close them over a period of time. The sampling is a 4-hour sample, so it is being run. And again, we're not looking at if you were to open and or close a window, you're not going to see a significant spike in that sample because again, it's not forced ventilation. It really is natural ventilation by opening the window. And I know early on, for the main part of the project, windows were definitely kept closed. And I think the only time I had heard about possibly a window being open was when the school was in session, when we were doing testing of some of the surrounding rooms that were still high.
Okay. So, and the same thing will happen when we go through that first round of testing. It'll just be as the students are in class. So if it's a particularly warm day and the teachers feel the need to open the window, then that's how the test will be run, or vice versa. If it's cold, then the windows will be closed. So we're just simulating real-life conditions.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
But we could do those tests actually during the day. That mean in the corner of a room somewhere isn't going to disrupt anything.
That was actually one of the questions that was brought up at one of the other school committee meetings, was to simulate the day, do it during the day, which we certainly would do, and then maybe even run it the full course of the day. 4 hours is the minimum time we needed. We could actually run it longer. All that does is give us more data as part of that and bring our detection limits even down further. We're well below what the EPA requires for detection limits, but certainly to have that full sample may give people more comfort that this is exactly a full simulating a whole day's worth of samples.
That's what I was getting at when I said close off a room and simulate what it's going to be like with kids in the room.
Right.
You want to do it with kids in the room or after kids?
Do both.
I mean, I think
One
it
at a
would make
time,
parents
guys.
feel better if it was done both.
Mike?
I, myself, are not in favor of having any testing going on with the students in the room. I think it can be perceived as disruptive to have, they don't know what's going on, but granted, they're not going to be wearing the covered suits, but to come into the classroom and take tests, I think we can go in at 3:30 to 8 o'clock, and I think that would cover it. Now, I don't know if that affects the cost, or, if that would be the reason, but I don't think to be there at 12 o'clock versus 3 o'clock is substantially different, personally. I don't know.
Moving around the class, though.
So,
Stirring stuff up.
based on some input from,
Go ahead,
sorry
finish.
about the
Yep, no, it's
two-person,
okay.
but based on the input from the concern for the impact on student learning, that's my concern for having this operation continue, including testing while students are in session.
Are the things that you use are they noisy? I have no idea.
Yeah, the sample pumps, they're what's called low-flow sampling pumps, so they're not really noisy.
What would you,
for asbestos
as loud as
area-
this fan that we can hear in the room right now?
Just a little bit louder than that. We run them 4 liters a minute, and they do make a little puttering sound because essentially it's a vacuum that's drawing air through the cassette, so they do make a little puttering sound. But certainly in a corner somewhere, they're not necessarily going to be very noisy. Our preference is obviously to get it centralized in the room, to try and represent the whole thing, so it may be a little bit of an inconvenience to do it in the classroom, but again, trying to respond to the concerns. We certainly could do it. Certainly noise is an issue. Getting them bumped over, some of this equipment is very expensive, so it can be something that if they're damaged, obviously that's a concern. Something tips over, a power cord, things of that nature. So as far as the sampling goes, it's not a cost. I mean, we basically have done a lot of work after hours. We just make sure that the air system's running, not the setback mode, which is, again, they're going to be running full tilt basically for this year.
Are there any other questions for Mr. May while he's sitting here? Dr. Colley, I have a question on the cafeteria. Has Michelle heard from the Board of Health regarding lunch plans?
The Board of Health still has some questions. They want, I should check. I'm actually taking notes on this for myself. They wanted to meet tomorrow. I don't know if that meeting was able to be set. They do have some questions about some of the very small spaces that did we test the small spaces, or it's like, did you test in this side of the room versus that side of the room? We'll go try to answer their questions, but they have not been up there
And
yet.
so parents know we cannot serve lunch until the Board of Health has come in
Right.
and inspected the kitchen area. So the students will still continue to be provided with the bag lunch as they have
For
been,
now.
or they can bring their own lunch in as
Yeah.
well. Mike?
I had one question regarding the Board of Health inspection. I was under the impression they were coming in to certify the opening of the commercial kitchens, so they're now weighing in on inspection on the PCBs? Your question...
That's new to me, but
okay.
That seems to be part of their question.
Okay.
I did not talk to them directly. I got this from Michelle, who's been asking them to come in.
I thought it was just their standard health protocol for a commercial kitchen opening. I didn't think they had been involved at all in the PCB issues, and...
Not until I
guess they
heard
are
that
now.
today.
Well,
So
great.
I don't
We're
know
looking for more.
what their issues are. That's why I said I'm hoping the meeting got set.
Well, that's one of those valuable team members, if we can have them part
Did
of
you have
it.
another question for Mr. May?
I wasn't sure which one it was for. Are we going into the congener report? Okay, so that
Yes.
was the one I don't know where it is, you referenced it, so.
Switch off.
So we got the results back from the conjure analysis. We took 6 of the highest air samples that we had. We had them tested for congeners. And just as a refresher, as you probably have heard, that the PCBs are not one compound. There can be as much as 209 different compounds. And you never find 209 different compounds in a particular PC mixture. All the analysis that we've done to date indicate that the Aerochlor, the kind of commercially available product used to be available, was Aerochlor 1254. And the conjure analysis bore that out. And most likely is PCB 1254, or originally it was much like the PCB 1254 that we see. We then took a look at all the different congeners, and we grouped them by the number of chlorines they have on them. With the thought is that the facts say that once you have PCB congeners that have more than 5 chlorines on them, then the toxicity increases with more chlorines hanging on these biphenyls. What the analysis revealed to us that indeed both the percentage of 5 and 6 particularly chlorines on these biphenyls had decreased by as much as 40%. I think the 5 was about 38% and 20% on the 6. So they're less toxic than they were originally when they were put in there. EPA's got 2 different PCBs. They have what these reference doses for. One is the 1254 and one is 1016. And the toxicity often is somewhere within that range. I was hoping that we would have weathered to look more like the 1016 because that's significantly less toxic. The reference dose for 1254 is 20, and it's 70 for the 1016. Our conceptual site model is unlike PCBs we find on the exterior of the building that are being subjected to weather conditions and sun and UV and all that type of thing. There hasn't been as much breakdown for this particular compound that you would see in an exterior surface. That being said, the conjure analysis also tests for dioxin-like congeners, which are the most toxic of the bunch. We didn't see any, or very little, of the dioxin-like compounds in there. So in real life, when you're using these PCB fluids in high temperature kind of uses, you can produce quite a bit of the dioxins, and we had to disprove that they were in there. So I guess the bad news is it is pretty much the 1254 that we identified. It hasn't degraded to something much less toxic, but it has degraded. The 5 and the 6 degraded about 40%. And based on that, we were able to decrease the toxicity by, and we gave you a range, because what EPA will do is once they have determined that there is an increase or decrease in toxicity, they generally throw in an uncertainty factor of 10 at least into this number to be safe. So then if you take that 40% decrease in toxicity, you really only increase the reference dose from 20 to 21, which gives you that 20 that we were talking about, which is probably more than reasonable. And then if you assume that you have a complete 40% reduction in toxicity, you're looking at something like 461 nanograms. So it's probably halfway in the middle of that. It would be a prudent guess, or I won't call it a guess, an estimate. And so that's I guess the bottom line of what our analysis indicated. It is PCB 1254. There are no dioxins that were created in the process. They have degraded, particularly in the 5 and the 6 chlorine compound, to a point where we think we can raise that number to at least the 320, and probably almost up to 400, just south of 400 if you reduce 50% of that number. So that's we have a draft report with all the data substantiating that, and the conjure analysis that gives you, each and every of the 209 congeners that they did or didn't detect, and that's where we're at with it.
Any questions, Tony?
Kevin, the EPA won't come back and say, all right, for that school, use this number. They won't do that.
No, there's, as you know, they've been pretty indecisive. Now, we could probably, you could run this by them, but they're not going to bless it on one way or the other. No more they're going to tell you to close your school system.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Following up on that, if we were to say to them, hey, here's the congener analysis, based on your calculations, here's where we think the new range is between 320 and whatever you said, 4 something.
Yeah.
We're recommending that the new threshold be X.
Mm-hmm.
Then they would react to that, would they? Or they say, yeah, no, we think it's higher, we think it's lower?
They would, they'll definitely react to it. Whether they put it in writing is a different story.
I'm just wondering how far we can push them to put something in, black and white.
I think they even kind of indicated to Bob one time that they kind of like to see what the end-all, be-all results like it was. We can submit it to them. I should say though, this is not a full-blown human health risk assessment. It's a risk calculation. Because in a full-blown human health risk assessment, you would go in and interview teachers, interview anybody who worked in that school, try to get exposure times and all that type of information. I frankly don't think it's going to buy anything in this case because it's a school. And the calculation, the tool that we use to do these calculations is EPA's tool. It's referenced in the article here. And you can go in and you can play with how long kids are in one room versus another room, and the end-all, be-all, I don't think at the end of the day, it's going to buy anything. If anything, maybe make things. I don't think it's going to buy anything. It's just going to spend some of your money that I don't really think at this point worthwhile, but we can actually go ahead and do that. But this is probably 95% there of if you were to do a full-blown risk assessment. We simply stuck these numbers into EPA's calculation tool, so we didn't change any of their assumptions except for that one, the RFD.
Eric?
The one thing I'm a little concerned about, and I'd like to get the EPA's reaction to it, I think we still have to go with the regular 300, 450, because that's what they've said. They've come out and said this is the limits we want to have.
Yeah.
So for us to change it, I think we open ourselves up for a myriad of things. So we need to stay at the 300 and 450, unless they come out with a reaction and say, something, you guys are correct with our calculations, and you can move them. I wouldn't be comfortable with raising our standards, what we said 2 months ago.
Yeah, no.
We want to be at 300 and 450, so.
Where it might be of use to you in the future. If that's your position, then that's your position. But going forward, you're going to be doing at least quarterly air testing in these schools. Mm-hmm. Just pure statistics. With laboratory results, you have a 95% confidence in the answers. So 5 out of 100 samples are going to be either below or above that number, just by pure statistics. So if you do happen to come across one that's 310 a year from now, and you're not going to close that classroom probably, you're going to probably do something differently there, retest it, be the first thing to do. But it might buy you a little wiggle room in going forward with the quarterly testing and that type of thing. And if you do pass it by EPA, the worst they can say is no. Right? That's the worst thing they can say. Thank you very much, but we don't like that calculation, and then no hurt in trying.
Mr. Sullivan?
I was interested to hear you present the Congener report, because I recall back when we started to contemplate where we were going and what we should do, you strongly urged us to consider Congener report to do further analysis. With time constraints, I think we held that off for a little bit. But what I'm wondering, and it certainly sounds like the area and the limits that have set can change a little bit now. But my question is, that's not because of what we did. If I understood correctly, it's not what we didn't change the compounds. It's perhaps because over time they expose to weather, or they change just over exposure to the elements if it's outside. So this shift wasn't results of our cleaning and removal.
No.
It's because of the further analysis of what we have.
Right.
Okay. And so I hearing that and the clarification, more information is good information. And we may be able to hone on some views and opinions of the EPA or other specialists, including yourselves, that tell us something. So I think it's...
we talk about when we look at chemicals, fate, and transport, particularly things, chemicals in the ground and that type of thing. But fate is fate, and it's been up there 40 years. So over the course of 40 years, it's degraded.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to get a couple of things said, just so we know which way we're going. Do we not want to change and leave it at 300 for now, try to send something to the EPA, see what they say, or do we want to change it to 320 and see if they'll let it go higher? What do you want to do with that one? That's one question. Question two is, do you want to test when the kids are in the classroom, or do you want to wait to just after the kids leave? We need to know so that we can give some direction to the people doing the testing.
Jim?
Well, just to answer your first question, the number 300 and 450, or the numbers 300 and 450, those numbers are based on pure, what's the congener, or what's the 1060?
No.
Yeah, we call it meat and chemistry. Right out of the bottle, right out of the drum.
Right. So, and that PCB version is what? 1054?
1254.
Okay, I'm sorry. So those numbers, 300 and 450, are based on NEAT 1254. We've suggested here tonight that our numbers could be raised up because we don't have NEAT 1054. We have something else that's some percentage less toxic than the NEAT stuff.
Right.
So, okay, that clears up for me. And then testing, I would personally like to see consistency. So whatever we've done in the past, I would think we would want to keep doing.
Well, we haven't done any testing where there's people because we basically, at first, we didn't have anybody in the building because it was before school started.
Right.
And then the few areas that we tested was, we had closed them off to do the cleaning, do whatever we needed to do in those areas, and then we tested afterwards.
Yeah, I just, introducing or changing variables is kind of a little shaky, I think, for me.
Mike?
Where I'm asking.
I agree that although we've identified that the compound's a little different and the results of our tests are going to be the same, but we're going to look at it differently, I would consider we should keep the bar at 300, knowing that that's even safer. 300 is not the maximum limit, but it is for us. So I'd like to continue on the testing as we've been doing, and as we create our plan going forward, I think we should consider what we're addressing in specific rooms and areas and recognize if we're into a yellow, it's the impact of this new data. I'm still concerned with impact on learning, but also the comment about the machinery made me realize that if the students are in the room, we're going to have to be careful where we put the test equipment, which changes the conditions. These testing equipment were in the middle of rooms, they were in the middle of cafeterias, so we can't just put it
How big?
On a stand.
It's not like we can hide them if we put them in the middle of the room.
Right, but the key is the tripod, and you have to
that's
place
what I'm
them
saying. You can't
randomly.
really-
So I just think that it would affect the, as Mr. Bernard indicated, the result of the test. So, two concerns.
If I'm going to err, I want to err on the side of caution. I'm all for keeping them at 300 and 450. We have to keep the best interest of the kids and the faculty and staff in mind. And I guess I'm seeing things different than you two. I would like to see what those kids are sitting in their classroom and testing with the kids in it. I know the first day of school, one of my teachers, my son's teachers, made a lesson plan out of it for the day. They actually identified what was source material in the class, and my son loved it. To where if they can incorporate it into the science classes, to where they're actually going to be, going through what the test is all about. Let them do the test. If we can do it that way, that they're actually in the classroom, then
Maybe we can
I'm
do it
all
in a
for it.
couple of rooms, but not necessarily all of them. Just
Absolutely.
to just see if there's a
do one
big
with
difference.
interrupt one class, see if there's a difference, compare it, make it into a science class. They can make it part of their lesson plan for the day. They can participate in it. I just think it would be a great learning experience. They can go home and tell their parents what actually went on. Everyone's satisfied.
Tony?
Bob, in your opinion, whether you do it during the day or wait to, right after school, do you see that changing the results in any way?
The only difference is that you will start to see, obviously, temperature differences if you're doing it at night. I know there's been a lot of question about how temperature affects it. It shouldn't be that significant. If you come in at 2:30, 3 o'clock and we're for 4 hours at 7:30, it's not like we're at midnight when it's really cooler. But I know that was one of the big questions that was raised, and that's why we addressed it one of the other meetings about possibly doing it while people are session. So that's all I can really say there. But other than that, 4-hour sample isn't going to be that much affected by the fact that the kids are in or are not in the room.
Or maybe-
Other than, trying to see if there's a spike, and those kind of spikes, you're not necessarily seeing a 4-hour long sample. It's going to be fluid over that time period. So even if somebody walks by and if there is dust, you're not going to see a big spike. It's an average fluid sample over a 4-hour period.
Eric?
my stance is not whether we're going to get a spike or not a spike, because I don't really think the numbers are going to change. I'm just talking about the parents sitting at home, putting their kid on the bus and saying, Johnny's going to be safe today because when they were in school, this is what the test resulted in. That's why I say it. I just think it'll ease a lot of gossip out in town, it'll ease a lot of questions, and just say, you know something, we tested when your kid was in class and this was the totals.
How many rooms are we going to be doing at a time?
I think the total number for the building was average around 60 rooms, so we're doing about 15.
15.
About 15 each quarter. So
Spread throughout the building.
And we would make sure we get each and every room over the course of that time. So the first 15, next 15, so we can select it. But we will also try and get a good representation of buildings. We're not going to focus on
Right.
corners. It will be represented.
You were kind of vague in what you just said to keep things variables
Well,
the same, but
yeah.
the variables are different because the students are now in the building. So are you suggesting that you feel better
Well,
doing it?
I mean, when science gets done, I mean, you want to, ultimately, you only want to change one thing, and that's the thing that you want to affect. And when other things start changing, like in this case, are there people in the room versus the earlier test where there was no one in the room, and that might have an effect on the results. And we might get a result that we don't even know what it means now because the test conditions were different. Now, if Mr. May thinks, because he's obviously the expert and I'm certainly not, if he thinks that wouldn't really have an effect, then I'd be comfortable with that.
With doing it during school?
Yeah. I mean, he runs these tests by the thousands, right? I mean, yeah. So if
You haven't hit thousands yet.
not here. Not here. I didn't mean here.
What is your recommendation for us to get the best sample? I mean, I do see Eric's, and I think deep down my preference is to do it while the students are in class because then we're getting a very good sense of what they are being exposed to while they are walking through that classroom.
I think because it was raised publicly, that's why we reacted the way we did and said that we certainly could do the sampling. I mean, really, in terms of the data, the systems are going to be running the way they would, whether we do it at night or during the day. It's really about just, I think, this is what I said, it's really, you're going to show them if you do it while school's in session exactly what they're, nobody can say, hey, you did it at night to make this different. It's,
Eases everybody.
and if you take and do some rooms and not others, I mean, that certainly is an option to minimize the disruption.
And do half.
Some data, half to a quarter of the.
We could do half in the rooms and then half
Certainly, it's really a
after.
decision that I think the school committee and superintendent need to make. And
I think maybe that's a balance. We could strike doing half while the students are in class, half after. And we can also see if it in fact is making a difference. We may look and see that these numbers during the day are exactly the same as the 2:30 numbers. And then it strikes a balance with, disrupting the classrooms and
And I think if we did it the first trial, the first quarter, do it half and half,
then look at the results.
and they come out standard, then the parents have already been eased, and we can do after school for the rest of the testing. I think it's a logical thing to do, and
Is everybody
I hope
okay with that?
everyone would agree with it.
Yeah, where feasible, if we can, we'll do it in the room. If not, we
Of course, get the teachers, if they're willing to have it done in their class. and-
and if they're making the science class out of it.
Yeah,
then-
you know, I think it'd be
Sarah's teaches the same. So that answers that one for you.
Okay.
What about the rug? Any direction on that? Dr. Collins?
How much of a cost are we looking at to pull that
Probably
carpet out
about
of there?
15. Just look
15,000?
at, just
That's
look
a
at
lot
what
of
was
money.
there before.
We need to get some new bids for that, maybe.
What?
Maybe we need to get some different bids.
I can go back out to bid.
Because it's not
Just
a
give
toxic
the,
material, right, but they're just going to throw it in the dumpster and throw it out,
Don't even bring it into the school.
One at a time, guys.
right out the window.
yeah. We'll do that and see what the
Okay.
time period is, so then I would like to give about 5 days to vent and then go back in and test.
Absolutely.
Mr. Sullivan?
Is that 15,000 just to remove the rug or include tile installation, or is that the difference between the original 30 and now it's up to 40?
See,
I thought that's what we were
Who
looking
did the removals? It was
The rules were actually done by.
Triumvirate. So there may be, the tile, the people who did the tile simply quoted the tile itself. So maybe a little bit more.
Okay, so we'll,
Because they'll have to remove it and then put new tile. From what I heard, it wasn't too difficult to remove the rugs. So
So we can find out, get a very
Yeah,
accurate
I'll get another
price
set of
on this
quotes.
before we...
It just means more time. Do you mind if I send you on email? Because otherwise we wait 2 weeks till the next meeting, and then,
Jim?
I don't think we can wait.
Jim has the floor.
We need a quote for this, why don't we just...
I just want to know exactly what rooms we're talking about for the rug.
I believe there's rugs in the office.
So the main office?
Yep.
So the entire red?
Yes.
Except the hallway.
Pretty much.
I'll let you talk.
Yeah.
Except the hallway,
No, that's carpeting. I meant the main hallway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the yellow assistant principal cubicle?
That has it. One of the G's next to it, which is one of the guidance office, obviously now doesn't.
One of the G's.
It's one of the little rooms.
Okay, yep. All right, so
there's rug in the other red area, way on the corner of the building.
55, 56?
Yeah, that area.
Okay, so when you say remove rug, you're talking about all of the rug in these hot areas?
Yes. There's also rugs in 249, 251, and 250, but those rooms really haven't been used pretty much at all. But I would remove it just because once we start using them, we may be kicking up dust. So I would do those as well. I would just take whatever carpets are out. There is a little tiny bit of carpet down in the first floor in the hallway as well.
Are you guys okay with that? Mike, go ahead. You have...
I'm in favor of authorizing part of the standard operating budget, if we can identify some funding to take care of removing the rug and get some bids and follow whatever. In other words, take this out of this program of deficit, the bundled costs.
That's the problem. I don't have any.
Didn't we have some maintenance funds and building funds?
We don't have any building funds.
Maintenance
I'll find out how much the maintenance funds are, but it's nowhere in the near neighborhood of 15,000.
All right, then I just don't want to. I don't understand why we have to hold up moving forward. If you're going to get some quotes and follow it, I'd prefer we have identified source of funding, but
I would just,
we cannot have something about emails. We cannot have email discussion individually on bids and then hold a meeting through electronic
I don't think that was the intention.
No, that was just to let us know that he put out 3 bids or 4 bids.
Right,
and this is what the price was, and we're going with this guy.
Yeah.
Mr.
There's
Sullivan,
more
go ahead.
information than a
Mike has the
discussion.
floor still.
Right. I don't think we have to wait for 2 weeks to approve it, is what I'm saying. You can let us know what you did, that's great, but I don't think we have to weigh in any further.
Yep.
I would
think we all
urge
agree.
the identify, going forward, on any additional expenditures that are not directly related to the scope of the work that we had presented and have approved, is to identify source of funding. So I would strongly urge examining the budget to start funding going forward.
Tony?
And Dr. Colley, we wouldn't be paying Triumphant to remove the rug. I mean, it would be the flooring contractor, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so,
it should be cheap.
Well, I'll ask him for a quote, both removal,
yep.
getting
See if
rid
we
of it,
can-
and tiling.
How low we can get that, and then, just let us know what the costs are and move forward. Any other questions on the middle school before we move on? Thank you, guys. Update on capital request.
Sorry,
Before we all pass out.
just making sure I take my
We
notes.
table anything?
Basically, the only thing that you have there is way back when I gave you guys basically a plan for the next 5-10 years for the capital improvement plans. When we first originally went to the Town Capital Improvement Planning Committee, they had an issue with the, some of the technology requests that we had put in. So what I did is over the last couple of years, we were able to cover some of those out of budget. And so I gave basically an update to the Capital Improvement Committee of the town, and I added a little bit at the end to talk about the need for beginning to talk about how we're going to handle the middle school, some of the issues that we're going to run into, not just covering the work that has been done now, but what are the long-term questions that we have, whether we build a new school, go back in and do more to this building, or whether we go and try to expand some of the other schools and rearrange the district in terms of grade levels and who goes to what school. So I just wanted you to see that, because I did go just to bring this to their attention, that there's some of the stuff that we said we'd do in...
Which one?
Should be a September 15th in your packet.
Any questions on the...
It's a memo to the capital, the school committee, that I basically wanted to make the town's capital committee aware of. And it's almost 2 years to the date when we did the first one. I just figured you should have an update as well.
Any questions, Mike?
Does it include responses to some of our capital items that were identified and went through a ballot and were turned down? I saw a notation. I have looked at that.
There are some of those in there. Well, it's to let them know that just because it didn't pass didn't mean the need didn't go away, that they were listed as things that, the district wanted to do over time. Hopefully they'll have some reconsideration of some of these items across the town itself. I mean, we also have the ADA people who have done a study and have identified all kinds of issues within the town, non-compliance issues, but because the buildings are old, there's some amounts of those compliance issues that have to be brought forward and begin to work on them, but not necessarily do we need to go and do all of it all at the same time. So it's more for the town to begin planning that we do have some capital needs. How do we start to put some money aside or plan some bonding issues to try to take care of some of the capital needs across the town, and the schools being part of it.
Any questions, any comments? Tony?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that we continue to let people, understand, realize that, this PCB issue is costing us a lot of money, but the schools continue to get older and things still need to get done. You just can't stop with our capital improvements.
Mike?
Who's the representatives from this committee that are on the capital improvement?
I've been getting emails, but I didn't think I was on that committee. I keep getting emails, so...
I know it's myself, Mike, and one of you, but I can't remember.
It's me.
It's him.
Yeah, I'm not on.
Send him your email.
Send them to Tony.
Tony, you've been getting emails? Because I've been getting them every day.
Really?
Yeah, from Jack Bond.
From Jack Bond?
Yeah, from Jack Bond.
The whole school committee. It's SC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's everybody, but...
But I wasn't able to go to that, so I think we have two people, so it may be you. I don't like that.
Any other questions?
I thought it was Jim, but that's okay.
Okay.
Meet during the day.
On to the
A motion by any long shot to...
Well, these last two should be quick. I'm
And after that,
going to suggest that we
table
take
everything?
the policies. You want to, we should maybe do the painting at least, since...
Absolutely. We can do that.
But we'll do the policies.
Oh, somebody painted that? Wow.
Yeah.
Great job.
I thought it was...
The last three items are really
Is this-
quick,
I was gonna say, these are gonna be quick, right?
just go through them.
So let's go to
You know,
the revolving, but,
you
I'm sorry,
do
the list of
have-
new hires.
You do have a list of new hires, resignations, non-renewals, retirees, so you have that running tally of people coming in and out of
Is
the
this
district.
all of them?
Yeah. Am I missing anybody?
You're missing an English teacher, at least, maybe two that I know of.
Oh, that's because when that list was done, we hadn't hired them yet,
Oh, okay.
so...
So it's not all.
So if they were tabled,
In,
they
in
could be on the
that,
next
in that list, and I still got one,
She was hired before Jen Fitton. I thought so.
I'll double
Anyways,
check.
well, so there's actually more than that, though.
yeah, there are a couple, there's one
Yeah, we're all
lady
gonna
that
pass out
we
soon.
offered the position. There's a few coming that are after October 1st, so they won't appear in our
Okay.
first round.
Okay.
Because we just offered jobs. One of them is an ESL teacher.
Okay, and on to the athletic revolving budgets.
That was an issue that Mr. Sullivan pointed out, that what we knew was the total expenditure last year, the revolving account for the sports. We went back and took out the projected. That was just, we were looking, so focused on the numbers, we didn't look at the text and remove that and make it total, so we gave you an updated one. Installation of whiteboards and projectors at the middle school. I know that, and I'll say this so you don't have to. Here at the high school, we had purchased projectors and whiteboards for pretty much all the classrooms here in the middle school. So during the summer, we were able to put up the ones here. In fact, I was in a social studies class today, just using it to no end. And then we were going to do the same thing at the middle school, but it kind of literally just stopped. So they're still in boxes. But I wanted to let people know that we're not going to waste them. We're still going to use them. The school, regardless of what we do, maybe use for 2-3 more years until we figure out what we're going to do to it, maybe longer. So we're going to start putting those up. So if people are worried that, this stuff is not being used and what did we do with it, they're still there. We're just going to start putting them up. Unfortunately, it's going to be slow going because it's now, like you said, it's going to be done after hours, just like the discussion with the testing. Mike and his helpers are only going to be able to get to 1 or 2 classrooms a day, and that's only if they don't have 20 other things going on. So
Jim?
over time, we'll put them back up.
What was the number? How many?
How many at the middle school?
So that's roughly half?
No.
Oh, that's all the classes?
Teaching.
All the teaching,
The
okay.
only difference between what happened at the high school and the middle school is the high school, we did all of the chalkboard surfaces.
Yep.
We didn't have enough money, obviously, to do both schools in that way, but every
Gets
classroom
one.
at the middle school will have one whiteboard in the front of the room.
With the projector.
And continue.
Great.
All right, and on to the action agenda, approval of a donation of a painting valued at $306.55 to the Westport High School. Is this who actually painted this? Marilyn Levesque?
Marilyn is the actual lady you see in the corner there. She was one of the ladies from 1960, the class of 1961. After 50 years, they all came this summer. We gave them a little tour, and actually it was Sheila in the business office that gave them the tour. So apparently her daughter, Averill, painted this with memorabilia from that time, and actually she used the old yearbook. So you can actually recognize some of the people in there and some of the stuff that you see in the picture. It comes right out of...
That's Mr. Krigley's dad, isn't it?
I don't know. I tell
the
you.
gym is named after. Yes, I believe it is him.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's beautiful. She's very talented.
Very nice.
Where is this going to be hung?
I'm going to leave it to the high school to figure where to hang it. I'd like to get a frame for it first. It's too nice of a picture to just put it without a frame around it. So hopefully we'll get that in there.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
I really thought
Yeah,
it
well,
was James said
those
it's
are
really
actually
effective.
supposed, how you're supposed to hang them, Dr.
Yeah.
Crowley. You are supposed to hang them like that.
Without a frame?
Yes, you are supposed to hang it like that.
Okay, we'll
The
hang it without a
sign
frame.
also has-
No, it's actually,
It's
it's
a wrap.
signed on the
It's
side.
a wrap, so
It's wrapped on the side.
don't frame
so-
that.
Science teacher.
You can put it behind glass.
I do enjoy it, but...
That's right. They should probably think about doing
A trophy
that.
case type of thing to where you can see the sides of it.
That's really good.
Thank you very much, Marilyn and Avril.
We will
for,
send her
painting
a
that.
nice,
Thank
thank you note.
An approval of a donation for valued at $160 of 2011 calendars and advanced books from Partners
We
Village
never did
Store.
all in favor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. You're going to yell at me. It's all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Karen gets right in there.
Wait!
Yep.
That would have been
Okay. Approval of this donation. Is there a motion to approve this
So
donation?
moved.
In a second?
Second.
Once again, Partners is very generous. Any comments?
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we have left the policies
Motion to table the rest of the action agenda
Actually,
till
I'm sorry.
our next available meeting.
I would say just C.
Well, is there a second to Eric's motion? Is there a second to Eric's motion to table the rest of agenda, which would be action agenda C? I'm sorry, did you second that, Mike?
No, hearing
No.
none.
Okay.
I may
I just want to make sure that there's no second to Eric's motion. Okay, is there another motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the entire policy C after having reviewed it since presentation previously.
Second.
That's
Okay. Is
absolutely
there any
good.
discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And
Make a motion to postpone approval of red line section G of the policy manual to a later date.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So you postponed.
Postponed G, approved all of C. Okay.
Did we have a motion on that? The
Motion.
postponed Motion?
G, second me, approved everybody.
See, now you're getting it. That's what Karen does.
I'm slow.
No. Okay, and on to D, possible vote on negotiated staff contracts. Is there a motion on this one?
I'd say, go ahead, Jim.
Well, does that need to be presented to something a little less obscure than what's written there?
Yeah, I guess we can do that. I was taking notes.
That's her job.
There was a, I
Oh,
think
wait,
a
before you go.
motion would be more in order
Before you go.
first
Yes,
to
that's what I-
discuss it.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I wasn't making a motion.
Oh.
I thought you were...
So you need a motion to discuss it?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to discuss the the vote on the negotiated staff contract.
To discuss it or to vote on it? And then you can open it up for discussion, then up and down. Just.
Well, I'm not clear because this is like super vague the way this is worded, so.
Part of the reason is because there has been an MOU or a memorandum of understanding drawn up. The teachers met today, voted, from what I understand, in the affirmative. Now it's up to the school committee to put it in play by also ratifying it if they so desire. The memorandum does include some salary increases that would become effective if it gets ratified by both parties. There are some other language changes and a couple of changes in terms of new teachers and what they need to do within the schools. We've worked really hard at this. I think this started just before I took over, and we've been at it ever since.
Jim, does that clarify?
Yep, absolutely. I would like to make a motion that we approve the memorandum of agreement for the negotiated staff contracts.
Second.
Discussion on that? No?
I would add that to the discussion that it's been a long 2-year process, that I've been on in the negotiations committee for the 2 years plus. I have some questions regarding the amendments and adjustments that I still have those questions. So that's my statement on the matter.
Any other, Jim?
I would say that first I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate the work of the current negotiating subcommittee team and previous negotiating subcommittee teams, and recognize that it has been a long time coming for this to happen, and I think it's long overdue and high time, and I'm happy to see an agreement.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of Jim's motion to approve the MOU?
MOA.
I'm sorry, it's late.
He said MOA.
Memorandum?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, it's an MOA.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
So now that it's public, I can say basically, there's some changes to the language. There is some conditions around teachers in the first 3 years taking some courses, and basically small increases in salaries over the next 3 years, 1%, 1%, and 2%. So I want to thank everybody for the ton of work that they did, and I have 2 copies here for the chairman's signature.
Is there a motion to adjourn into executive session?
Do you want to do the minutes, or you
Oh,
want to
I'm
skip?
sorry, I forgot there was 2 pages.
It's just a couple of minutes.
I am sorry about that. Approval of the minutes of Wednesday, September 7th, 2011.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval.
Abstain.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Jim abstained.
I wanted to make sure I knew something.
Approval of the minutes of Wednesday, September 14th, 2011.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Discussion?
I'm sorry, go ahead,
The
Mike.
14th,
Yes.
I think you also left.
No,
Was it the 12th or the 14th?
the 7th I left, that's the only one.
Mike?
In reviewing the minutes, I noticed that there's a new approach to covering thoughts of individuals that are shared and somewhat accurate. I'd make the suggestion that we also do have a record of meetings that our Director of IT, I'm sorry if that's not your title, but you have many titles, and if that's not one, but we maintain a library of the videos, I assume, on YouTube and what have you. And going forward, if there's any way to tie in that record to the minutes, it may enable the note keepers, including Mrs. Tudelo, to have a little more flexibility in referencing. I mean, capturing 3 hours of a meeting is a difficult task. So I just would think going forward, if there's a way we could make reference to the indexed film, if we're maintaining those.
We do, and we have to, and it is really a part of the minutes. So if anybody were to say, hey, I want to see the minutes from this time, we give them the paper and we give them a copy of the DVD.
I just appreciate that clarification.
They are there.
It's a good time for discussion, because I looked through the minutes, and the quality of them is, I'm sure this meeting as well will continue to be so.
I want to make sure on the 14th, before you vote, you didn't leave. I think that was just a copy-paste. I think she used the same...
I definitely did not
He
leave.
didn't leave.
on the 14th, so I want to make sure we make that
change
note.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that on the title.
That's, well, I knew it was one, and then when I look at the second one, I said, wait a minute, it's the same thing. So I want to make sure if we
Yep.
vote on that, we change that.
All set on that? All those in favor? Do you have some? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And on to correspondence. We have notice from the Mass School Building Authority regarding the Macumber School and the high school project, which just basically says that it is the fully executed project funding agreement with the MAC and the high school, and that we are instructions on entering into the project budgets into the MSBA. So
Yeah, I just found out today what that entails.
they have a payment system, their
The ProPay.
notification of their payment system.
ProPay, from what I hear, requires a little bit of doing. I actually called another business manager in one of the other districts that's doing it. And it won't be easy for the town, but...
New business request, anything?
Michelle, at some point, we need to go over, we need to clarify
We can put that in,
out-of-district students.
Well, that can go to the policy subcommittee as well.
Where do you want it? Because I'm taking notes.
What do you want to do?
District students, what?
I mean, we just need to
He
go over
has
the
questions on
policy as far as
policy, JJJ.
out-of-district students playing, sports.
Do you want to do it here or the
No.
subcommittee is my question.
I'd say go to the subcommittee first would be my, unless you guys have another
That's
thought.
fine.
I think there's been so many emails that have been floating around about it that I think it needs to be in public so they know that we're...
Either way, that's fine.
I just think we need to be upfront and honest with everybody.
Just think the color on the table will be nice.
Yes. Be nice.
I think the policy subcommittee has a mission, and that's to review the policies. If this is an indication that we may not be following our policy,
that's
it
fine.
belongs in subcommittee, but I don't think otherwise
That's fine.
it belongs in subcommittee.
That's fine. That's
No, I
fine.
don't, that's my statement.
No, that's okay.
It just needs to be addressed.
That's fine.
Yes.
We'll include that on the next meeting.
That's what I'm taking note.
Is there anything else?
I think it's appropriate to consider a few items on ongoing agendas. I will make reference to past. We've talked about this seems to be the new format to suggest in the open meeting where we want to go with some new business. There's some personnel matters that I've indicated in emails in the past and conversations in the past that we should be putting on the agenda.
Can you give
And I'm
me-
not sure if they're
There's
executive or not.
actually
so
stuff tonight in executive that you've been requesting, so that may answer that question.
Okay, so we'll talk about it. And then the second item that I'd like to consider, which I'm sure everyone is anxious and it may already be planned, is our revised operating budget for 2012 as we're going forward. Management of the 2012 budget. And third and finally is
Getting tired.
the funding question for spending projects, and whether
That needs to be on the next agenda.
be the next agenda. Our spending project being the PCB,
The PCB,
middle school
the middle
issue.
school, how we're going to approach that issue.
And whether it be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to look at who, where, and why, because I think we have a tight schedule going forward. So those are my items to
Thank you.
consider.
Comments and statements from